Going. Hansard Broadcasting, thank you. I now welcome my very dear friend, Senator the Honourable Malarndirri McCarthy, Minister for Indigenous Australians, representing the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government. And I know you don't, but I'm going to ask you, Minister, do you wish to make an opening statement?
Just good to be here with you, Chair, and the committee.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr Sharp, sorry, I didn't invite you to make an opening statement, but I see you've tabled it.
Yes, I just tabled it.
Did you want to make a statement?
That's fine,
You
Chair.
comfy with that?
Thank
I think for the committee that we'll just table this. Thanks very much. Thank you. Senator McDonald.
Thank you very much. And we'll continue with my questions about the instrument landing system at Townsville Airport. I had asked you just before the break, Mr Curran, about the opportunity for a temporary landing system that I believed had been used at Darwin, and I think you might have an answer for me.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, I was able to check in with our Chief Technology Officer as to a temporary instrument landing system. We're not aware of any such technology being in existence, but what we are aware of is that in Darwin there was a temporary displaced threshold during some works, the runway works there. That practically means that there's a portion of the runway which becomes unusable, and on longer runways aircraft can land later. That's our understanding of the process that was put in place for Darwin, as we're not aware of any technology anywhere that would be a temporary ILS, given the nature of instrument landing systems.
All right, I appreciate you answering that because it had been raised with me. The other thing we started talking about was the poor weather, or the weather event that happened over the Australia Day weekend, and you had some data on flights. If you could provide
Senator,
that, please.
Yes, if I may, just to confirm. As I said, we don't provide the services at Townsville, so our data set is potentially imperfect, but it will be very close. Over the weekend of the Australia Day weekend that you referenced, from the 24th to the 27th, Townsville Airport saw 92 arrivals, and there were 3 arrival flights that were cancelled. As I said just prior to the suspension, the reason for those arrival flights being cancelled is unknown to us because we don't provide the services there. It may not have been due to weather, it may have been for various other reasons.
What about departure flights? Do you have data
Yes,
on that?
we understand, and again, this potentially would not be a perfect data set, but we understand that there were 2 departures that were cancelled.
So, how will I get the information on that?
Senator, it could be that we could provide the details of these flights to you on notice, and perhaps you could seek a confirmation from the Department of Defence. The reason why I can't give you the full answer here is that the potential for there to have been a departure from Townsville and operate entirely within the Defence Service provided area exists, and indeed an arrival within that area, and so we wouldn't know necessarily if a flight was undertaken on that basis.
I understand. So what I'm trying to get to is what flights, arrivals and departures were cancelled, and of course where I'm going is because of the absence of an ILS system. And what I'm trying to preempt is should we have a late cyclone or an early cyclone, later this year or whatever it might be, that should we need emergency evacuations or arrivals into Townsville, because that's a tertiary hospital for Western Queensland and the rest, how are we preparing for that rather than just watching it happen? I just don't want us to be in the middle of a disaster going, if only we'd thought about that then.
Senator, what I can say is with the ILS not operational, there are a range of other instrument approaches that get to similar but not the same minima. I think I've mentioned that in previous evidence, but beyond that, it really is a matter that you'd have to check in with the Department of Defence.
So when we've talked about those other landing systems, it's my understanding they're not installed on all of the Qantas and Virgin and Jetstar aircraft, certainly not installed on the RFDS flights that I'm aware of.
There is a broad range of other instrument approaches that are available at Townsville, and it would be the case that all aircraft could do one of them, so long as they can operate to the instrument flight rules, which you would have to if you were contemplating doing an ILS. So there would be other approaches available with varying minima, which practically means the altitude at which you need to be able to be visual with the airfield.
All right. You know that we've had these problems at Mount Isa Airport and now with Townsville having the ILS out. I just want to make sure that these flights that are cancelling are not because we've removed important technology and that we are reasonably able to predict that should there be a severe weather event that this community would suffer because we've failed to come up with an alternate technology or, yeah.
So it can be the case even with an ILS that there can be diversions necessary because the weather is such that you're not able to get in the type of ILS that Townsville has previously had and will have into the future. It does have a minima where it's possible, and it does happen from time to time that you're not able to be visual and therefore have to divert. The likelihood of that is reduced with an ILS, and the other minimas are slightly higher, and so the likelihood of having to divert is somewhat potentially increased.
All right. Again, just flagging, we've got over 2 years until you think that you'll have the ILS replaced and operational, and 2 years is a long time for a community that is the health service for such a big area. And I just have a feeling in my bones that we should be working harder to try and find a solution.
Senator, we've committed to put the ILS in as quickly as we possibly can once we're able to access the site. Our assessment is that will be approximately 9 months, but we've committed to working with the Department of Defence to get that done as quickly as we possibly can when we're able to access the site.
All right. If on notice you'd provide the information that you've spoken about and see how much information you can get about the reasons for those cancelled flights, and I shall attempt to ask Defence.
Senator Will. Yes.
Thoughts and prayers with me. All right.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
I've got Senator Hodgins' moment. Did you have questions?
I do. Look, happy for you to go.
All right. Senator Hodgins.
Thank you, Chair. I've got some questions about the reported strategic partnership. Air Services Australia is reportedly considering a strategic partnership with a sovereign wealth fund that would transfer and lease back all aviation rescue firefighting service assets, including specialised vehicles, maintenance capabilities and staff, to a private entity. Can you please let me know what has been the involvement of PricewaterhouseCoopers in the development of this proposal, and when were they first engaged, what's the scope of their work, and has the Minister been briefed and kept up to date and informed of PwC's role?
So I'll kick off.
Thanks.
The actual financing is effectively accessing sovereign funds to finance infrastructure. So it's mainly about new assets. Our assets are very old and at the end of life. So it's not really selling current assets, it's actually how do we procure about 1.8 billion of new assets. We have used advisors. This is a very specialty area. We're the only provider of these unique assets here in Australia, and internationally the assets of an ANSP spread globally. So we were looking for very specific criteria and skill set. But I'll pass to my CFO, Mr Webster, to talk specifically about the contract and the procurement element, and I can add some more flavour to it.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr Sharp. Craig Webster, Chief Financial Officer for Air Services Australia. So just to reiterate what my colleague just said, this is a financing arrangement specifically for a new set of assets, so about 1.8 billion worth of new assets. It does include the transfer of existing assets in that space, worth about $300 million. The bulk of that $300 million is actually relatively new assets that's been put in place for Western Sydney International. And outside of that, the asset valuation is actually relatively low in that space. What this does is this enables us to bring forward investment that would otherwise be very difficult to invest in at this time. Air Services has got, as I'm sure the senators are aware, some financial challenges at this time. And so it's not as straightforward an exercise to go out and procure extra debt to go and buy these assets. But what this sovereign fund opportunity allows us to do is it allows us to match early delivery of the assets over the next 5 years with a longer term provision of the cost of that and a tariff that we would pay for that over the length of the anticipated transaction, which I think we mentioned earlier on. We're still in pre-decision consultation in that process, but as it stands today, our understanding is the likely tenor of that deal, the likely length of it, is 50 years. So we're talking about bringing forward investment over the next 5 and paying for it in a regular tariff over the course of the next 50 years. In terms of your question on advising about the process with PwC Securities in particular. As Rob said, that there is a limited number of advisors that we could go to because of the specific nature of these assets. However, we put together a detailed procurement process. That procurement process included all the normal steps of looking at a market engagement to see who was potentially capable of providing those sorts of services for these kind of assets. That process also included and still includes, as we're going through the process today, a series of probity advisors, and those probity advisors advise our board on the appropriateness of the process that we're following. And so it is not just a case of PricewaterhouseCoopers Securities give us a number for what this deal is worth. We've got all sorts of checks and balances on top of that, which enable us to get some comfort that the numbers that we're looking at and the proposals that we're looking at are appropriate.
If I could just add, Senator, the nature of their services is financial advice, so it's not a consulting activity. It's a specialist finance advisory advice for infrastructure funding.
Thank you both. You said pre-decision consultation. Can you just give me a little bit more information about what, where the work's up to and what that means, pre-decision consultation?
Yeah, so I'll give a brief example, then I may pass to Ms Mesa, our Chief People and Culture Officer, to explain what we mean by pre-decision consultation. So the work has really gone through an interim stage where we went out to the market and looked to see whether there were any providers interested in providing this service. We then down-selected, once we identified that there were 2 in the market that could potentially provide this capital. We down-selected through a non-binding initial offer phase in late November. And at that point, our obligation to our staff is before we decide anything, not after we've made a decision, not after the decision becomes final, we start consulting with our staff in order to understand their views on the potential arrangement. And just before I pass to Ms Mesa to describe that process, we've carried out a set of now specific engagements with our staff where we have described in some detail the nature of this deal. I've personally, as CFO, conducted briefings with aviation firefighters on how this works and what the intended process looks like. So this is a process that we take incredibly seriously in terms of the consultation.
Thank you, Mr Webster. Danielle Messer, Chief People and Culture Officer. You've covered it quite extensively, Mr Webster, but I just would clarify that from December last year, we have conducted a series of both union and employee consultation and engagement briefings. Something in the order of 100 briefings have been conducted since December. We currently run weekly national consultative meetings with all of our unions and continue to engage with our employees. So the pre-decision consultation element is, as Mr Webster decides, it is a transparent and a genuine opportunity for our unions and our people to provide input before a decision is made. So further to the detail about the process that Mr Webster's just provided, if we get to a stage where we make a recommendation in terms of a decision, that will happen probably around March. And at that point, we engage again in post-decision consultation, and consultation will continue after that point as well. In order for each of those briefings to have occurred, we've shared something in the order of 30 different documents, very, very detailed, somewhat unprecedented the level of detail that we have shared, and that's a demonstration of our commitment to transparency and genuine consultation.
Thank you very much. Is it correct that under the proposal being examined, some regional ARFFs workshops may be closed, and if so, are you able to provide any detail on which ones? And has any assessment been undertaken yet to know the impact on regional emergency response capability?
I'll kick that off, and then maybe Mr Sharp can comment further. This particular proposal is purely a financing exercise. This does not trigger in itself the closure of any other aviation firefighting facilities, be it for training purposes or be it for any other purposes. Nevertheless, Air Services Australia are committed to continuing to work through whether or not the best way possible to provide all the maintenance activities for the new firefighting trucks that I think Mr Sharp described earlier on are coming in is in a decentralised set of workshops or a more regionalised approach. But that's independent from this financing arrangement and would occur whether or not we chose to finance the trucks and the stations by this method or any other method. Mr Sharp?
We have a program underway which is called Next Gen ARF. So this is a board-signed business strategy which was around replacing the assets. And the regional element is actually really critical, and 163 million has already been assigned and approved for regional fire station developments. And I'll pass to Mr Curran, who can talk through the detail. But a lot of these are actually been cyclone impacted up north, Queensland centric, and there's about 5 different airports that are being invested in over the next 2-3 years.
Thank you, Mr Sharp. A little bit more detail, if I may, Senator. We recently did take a submission to the Public Works Committee. I can get the date for you if that's helpful on the next gen aviation rescue firefighting proposal. As Mr Sharp said, phase 1 will require approximately $163 million. And sorry, I have the PwC approval was granted on the 27th of November last year, the Public Works Committee approval. And that phase of work will deliver fire station rebuilds at a number of locations, Cairns, where we had our fire station destroyed during the cyclone. We're in a temporary arrangement today, and so we're rebuilding a fire station there, Mackay and Rockhampton. There are also minor works to all of the tender bays at Gladstone, Sunshine Coast, and at our Learning Academy in Melbourne. And then we have what we call cold drill grounds, where we don't actually have hot fire training. There'll be cold drill grounds in Cairns and Mackay, Rockhampton, Gladstone and the Sunshine Coast. And we'll also work through some decommissioning of our hot fire training ground in Cairns. Hot fire training grounds have some environmental challenges, and one of the parts of the broader strategy in our Next Gen program is to look at how we can have best practice aviation rescue firefighting training hubs that are more centrally located, less environmental impact and more efficient in terms of the way that we train our firefighters with better workplace health and safety outcomes.
Thanks, Mr Curran. And just quickly, I know that you said PwC was chosen because of specialist financial advisory required. They don't have a fantastic track record of delivering on government projects. Were there other firms that were considered or did have that expertise?
There were other firms considered at the early stages of the process. The particular part of PwC obviously has an umbrella of series of brands and supporting parts of the organisation. This is a very specific one. It's regulated under ASIC. It's specifically to deliver financial advisory support. It is unconnected with the previous entity that was responsible for the tax advice that I think perhaps the committee will be aware of. And this was viewed that, and it was an organisation that had very specific example of work in this space, including in the aviation firefighting and in the regulatory space on air services type activity elsewhere outside Australia. As Mr Sharp has identified, we are unique, obviously, in this particular market, so that there aren't a lot of other examples of our type of assets in Australia. And so we did have to look for people that had that specific advice. And PwC Securities were that organisation.
Senator, just to add a little bit more colour, ASIC has quite specific market integrity rules, licensing, and there's a whole raft of conflict of interest and other probity controls that are around that particular sector. So it is actually a separate entity. In terms of the experience as well, this particular entity was involved with UK NATS, which is our equivalent in the UK, looking at something similar. They also provide advice specifically to ANSPs and capital strategies in Norway, Saudi Arabia and Canada. It's a very specialist skill, and that's one of the criteria that we were looking at.
Thank you. Interestingly that you bring up the UK, you I'm sure are aware of the London Fire Brigade's experience under private asset management arrangements where equipment unavailability and delayed repairs reduced operational capability. I suppose I'm interested in what concrete steps are being taken to ensure that those same risks don't occur here.
And look, that particular example has been raised, and along with some concerns around outsourcing. This is a situation in the UK where the entire fire brigade was outsourced. It was actually by local councils who were reliant on government grants, and so they had no revenue that was actually matched with the expenditure. And because it was fully outsourced, there was no contractual commitment to maintain innovation and growth, and so there were some detrimental outcomes. What we're talking about is something entirely different. One, we're regulated, so we need to go through an ACCC regulatory process with the airlines. We do actually have these investments that we're looking to fund in the actual pricing negotiation that we're underway with the airlines. This is actually pretty critical for international carriers and the larger domestic, because firefighting is a fundamental safety requirement at the major airports in particular. So that process is underway, and that actually enables us to recover through pricing and an ACCC process revenue to match the investments. And what that means is our operational costs are actually passed through to the airlines. We need to be efficient, but ultimately there's a regulated outcome. In the UK there wasn't. The revenue through the grants dropped off, and there was no mechanism to actually pay for the repairs. So it was actually a model that was always going to have an issue. We're not going down that path at all. This is really an infrastructure financing, not an outsourcing. Okay,
that brings some reassurance. Last question, Chair, and sure. Then I'll pass the call. I'm aware this is an exercise in financing arrangement, as you've said, but Air Services has held landing fees flat or reduced for many years, contributing to those financial pressures that I think you did raise in your earlier response. Can you give any more information on why such a complex and costly private lease arrangement is being considered instead of, for example, increasing those landing fees to fund ARFFs as a fully public safety critical service?
I'll pass to Mr Webster to talk about the alternative financings.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Senator. So we are already progressing a long-term pricing action through a process with the ACCC and our customers, the airlines. We've been working on that now for about a year. Air Services has not put in place a long-term 5-year pricing initiative in the last decade, and this is the first time we will have changed our prices during the last 10 years. There was an interim pricing increase was put in place in August of last year of 6%. However, what we're following through over the last 12 months, and we will be completing our submission to the ACCC in March, will be a submission for price increases for the 5 years from January 2026 through until the end of June 2031. And that process follows a normal regulatory building block model under the approach that's provided to us by the ACCC. And what that really encourages us to do is invest in our assets. And when we invest in our assets, we increase the thing that's called our regulated asset base under that building block model. And when we increase our regulated asset base, we get cost recovered from that by increasing our prices. Unfortunately, that occurs in arrears, not in advance. And so we've already baked in the process that we are going to be seeking extra funding via that price increases. But that doesn't provide us the ability to invest in these assets straight away. And that's why I referenced earlier on, this was a method of bringing forward that investment as opposed to waiting until the revenue comes in for it to occur. Our revenue is currently in excess of $100 million per annum below our operating expenditure. And under that basis, it will take a little bit of time before we could generate sufficient free cash flow to continue to further invest in our assets out with an environment like this. So this is why this was particularly attractive for us to consider. And that's what we're doing. We're looking at it at this point. We have not made a decision, but it's got some good characteristics associated with it.
And Senator, just to be clear, our revenue sits at around 1.1 billion. And in FY19, the revenue was 1.1 billion, and we've only just got back to 1 billion now, 5 years on. And of course, our costs have escalated through that 5-year process post-COVID. So the pricing negotiation with the airlines is to effectively reset the pricing structure in the industry for what's appropriate to fund the business. But that's a different funding to the actual aged assets that we have that we need to replace. And there's about 6 to 8 billion in assets over the next 5 to 7 years that will need replacing. And so that requires specific funding, and that's the strategic partnership is looking at that element of it.
Thanks. So 10 years seems like a very long period of time to have not increased those prices. Is that unusual? And do you think, had we done this 5 years ago, we might have actually had the cash flow to avoid this private leasing pursuit?
It's interesting when you look back at the history. At the time the pricing wasn't put up, there was actually an increase in revenue that was occurring, and that was when Jetstar entered the market and grew the market. So the volume was growing, and so the price was kept flat. The Achilles heel to that strategy, however, was that when COVID hit and the volumes dropped, your price was not commensurate with the service level. So that was one of the strategic issues that underpin that. We're the second lowest charging ANSP globally. I think Nigeria is the only country lower than us, just to reflect the pricing issue that we're facing. So there is a reset needed with the airline industry to pay their way. And what was referenced was the regulated asset base. And so one of the other interesting things is that the asset only is enabled for charging purposes when it's commissioned. And so our network modernisation program and One Sky are approximately $3 billion of investment. They actually deliver in 2027.
How much is One Sky? Sorry.
One Sky, which is our air traffic management program.
Yeah, it was about $1 billion at the time, wasn't it?
$2 billion.
$2 billion, that's right.
And the underpinning telecommunications network, modernising that is another $1 billion. So there's about $3 billion we've been spending through that period, but couldn't charge the airlines. And the regulatory model works on the basis that you can only do that when you commission them. So One Sky has been commissioned. The back end of 27 is our stake in the ground. That means we can start to charge the airlines from that point. Okay. So there's also been a period of investment in that infrastructure, and it will flow into that new pricing model.
Okay, and just my final quick answers, if possible, please. But I'm just keen to know who will hold ultimate responsibility for public safety outcomes if assets are transferred to a private entity. Can we balance those, I suppose, conflicts between... It sits
directly with us, Senator.
It does sit directly with you. Great, thank you.
All regulatory responsibility remains with us.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Senator. I've just got confirmation too that the senator who did want to question AMSA is not available now, so we can release AMSA. Thank you. Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to know, have there been some flight disruptions today?
I'll pass to Mr Curran on the operations side.
Senator, I've checked the network 3 times a day. There was significant disruptions due to weather in Sydney this morning and potentially into the afternoon, but due to weather.
I've got a report here from Travel and Tour World that airlines have had to suspend 43 flights with 100 delays. That's about right?
Senator, I haven't got the specific statistics on today's performance, but I know that this morning there was some significant bad weather in Sydney. That's the kind of level of delay and cancellation you may have used.
Were there any staff, air traffic controllers or Air Service Australia staff not available today to work?
Senator, there was a normal processes of air traffic controllers not being available, but they were all covered, and none of the delays in Sydney, I checked this morning, none of the delays in Sydney this morning were due to air traffic control.
How many air traffic controllers called in sick today?
I'd have to take the specifics on notice, Senator. But
some called in sick today?
Yes, Senator. We've got about 50-ish air traffic controllers we deploy every day into Sydney, and in the normal course of events there's a number of illnesses or absences due to carers' leave or sickness, as the case may be.
Well,
but they were all covered.
If you could take that on notice. And were there some in Sydney?
Yes, sir. I'm referencing Sydney specifically. I'm not aware of any other significant weather disruptions in the network today other than Sydney, but as I said...
What was the weather?
This morning we had a significant amount of diversions.
Sorry, what was the weather?
We had a significant amount of diversions in what we call the terminal area, so the arrival arena into Sydney, which meant that we couldn't keep the normal flow of traffic running because aircraft, as they approached the airfield, were having to divert. That means we have to slow the rate down because air traffic controllers need to manage the safety outcome first and foremost, and then the delays can back up a little bit from there. But it was due to weather, Senator.
What I'm asking, what was the exact weather? What was the weather? Was it rain? Was it fog?
Thunderstorms and lightning was the report I had in the terminal area.
Okay.
Senator, there was a stop to all flights on the ground in Sydney this morning because of lightning. That's a standard process for safety of people on the apron.
Okay. Sure. Just wondering, it seems a little strange because it's very coincidental that 2 years ago, almost to the date, there was also significant disruptions on this very day. We had estimates. It happened to be Super Bowl Monday as well.
Sorry, yes.
So, did you ever look at that 2 years ago? Did people call in sick 2 years ago for that cancellations? For those cancellations?
Yes, I recall the event. It was the 14th of February in 2024. 12th, sorry.
Yep.
Okay. Going from memory.
Yep. 14th February is another day. Don't forget that one either.
Yes, okay. There were some sick leave issues that day, and on that occasion, we were the cause of the delays. That is not the case today.
Right. Did you investigate back then whether or not people really were sick or they were staying home to watch the Super Bowl?
Senator, we went through a process.
Well, it's just happened twice in 2 years now. I mean,
Senator, there was
quite a coincidence.
Senator, there was nothing abnormal about the absence in Sydney today. Well, if I gave that impression, I apologise. There was nothing abnormal about the level of absence.
You seemed very defensive though. As soon as I asked you.
He's probably cranky because of his Super Bowl.
Okay, all right, come on, Chair. Jeez, as soon as. Yeah, you know when you're over the target when the chair intervenes. But yes, sorry, go on.
Senator, to the point I was making was simply that I keep a check on the network 3 times a day in the morning, middle of the day in the afternoon.
But I'll just go back to my question I asked. Did you look at that 2 years ago and see were those sick absences actual sicknesses?
Senator, we went through a process to have a look at the situation, and to our understanding, there was nothing untoward on the day.
Okay, this is to 2024.
That's correct, Senator.
Yeah, it's quite the coincidence. So let's wait and see what happens next year or the year after. Okay, some other questions for Air Services. Sorry, just didn't have my file there. So over the last 12 months, how many days has Air Services operated below its planned or preferred staffing levels at major airports?
Senator, I would have to take that on notice to make sure I give a correct answer. Could you confirm the locations you would like me to cover?
Well, we're saying major airports, so let's say capital city airports, and could that be broken down by airport too?
Senator, yes, I think it can be. It'll be a little bit of data to pull together, but I think we can take that on notice.
Okay. Also, could you outline what proportion of those disruptions occur during planned operating hours as opposed to extraordinary emergency circumstances?
Senator, just to be clear on your first question, it may be that Air Services had less than the staffing that we might otherwise strategically plan for, but if the demand at the airport is below, we would be efficient and not necessarily replace a shift.
Well, you can note that, but just my question is how many? Obviously, you've got the preferred target or planned target for a reason, so I still think it's relevant to know whether you're below that. Particularly, to deal with issues of people calling in sick and the like, which can happen. Right. We did ask earlier today there were major disruptions in January, major cancellations. What happened then?
Yes, Senator. The major disruption was on the 15th of January in Sydney, and we had a number of personnel call in on short-term unplanned leave due to either sickness or carers leave, and sought to replace all of those shifts, but were unfortunately not able to replace all of them. Practically what we do when that occurs is we need to maintain safety outcomes, and so we reduce the arrival rate. And in that case, that generated a range of delays and also some cancellations. We've been very transparent, both in the media and with industry, around that falling short of the standard we hold to ourselves, and being very disappointing and frustrating for our customers, particularly after we've had a year in 2025 where we've had really good improvement in our performance compared with previous years. Senator, so I'll give you a little bit of context there. Through 2025, we saw a steady increase in traffic, and in December we saw an increase in traffic of around 4.5% compared with the December before, and even 8.8% increase in international passenger flights. So quite a big increase. In the context of that increasing in traffic, we were able to support the industry having better on-time performance. It's at 77% now, which is up around about 3% year on year, which is good performance, not great, but definitely tracking in the right direction. And for our part, our contribution to that has been that we've reduced our air traffic service variations by around 70% compared with in 2025 compared with 2024, and our share of delay improved by 33%. And so, for overall delay, Air Services is attributable for about 0.2% of overall delay. So we've been improving our performance, but on the 15th of January 2026, we didn't hit the mark, and as a consequence, there was a number of delays and cancellations. I should put on record for the committee some clarification. There was a lot of media around it, as I think you might have referenced, and it certainly appeared that we were held accountable for all the delays that day. In fact, there was already significant weather that was forecast in Sydney that day. There was low cloud and poor visibility in the morning and thunderstorms in the afternoon. And we were actually attributable for about 36% of the delay only. That doesn't mean that we didn't cause impact to passengers and our customers. We did, but we were not the reason for all of the delays and cancellations in Sydney that day.
I asked earlier, but there's no compensation provided to the airlines from you?
Senator, that's not the arrangements in our pricing model. There's nothing through that in the ACCC setup.
Right. Okay, so the airlines have to bear the costs?
Senator, I think our focus is on making sure as few of those occasions occur, but yes.
Right, okay.
Senator, we are
cost recovery only goes one way, eh?
Sorry, we are held quite accountable. We have industry forums every quarter. Let's just say our airline customers are pretty forthright if we drop the ball, and certainly this type of issue gets canvassed at the time.
So the cost is you get a talking to? That's the cost.
I'm just saying our feet are held to the fire in regards to performance. We also have legislative responsibilities. There's quarterly reporting to the Minister. We have a lot of focus. We're very transparent. We actually issue monthly reports on all our issues to the industry, and that's quite a public document. So we do, whilst we mightn't have to cut a cheque for a penalty, we certainly feel the pressure when an event like that occurs.
Okay. All right. I've got evidence here that, is it on average that around 5 hours a day have reduced arrival capacity at Sydney Airport? Is that about right?
No, that's not a statistic that I'm familiar with. In what context, please?
Okay. Are you comfortable with the amount of times you're meeting your planned staffing levels at the moment?
Senator, no, we've got some more work to do. We've talked a number of times in this committee about growing our staffing numbers so that we're able to have resilient on-call capability, and that's something that we're still working toward. I'm very pleased to say that in 2025 we employed and rated, licensed another 91 air traffic controllers against a workforce plan of 85. So we have more air traffic controllers at aggregate than we need. However, we don't have the sufficient number to have an on-call capability, and that's what we're working toward.
Okay. Last estimates, you told us you had 41.5 air traffic control staff available, and that's 2.5 more than your requirement. If you've got more than your requirements, why are you still suffering these issues with staff shortages?
Senator, that's a fairly tactical number, and we did have 41.5 at the last estimates. Sydney Tower has a requirement for 39, and today we have 38 available. So we have one less available today in Sydney than we would prefer against our what we call mature requirement, and that came about due to a number of failures. We had 3 trainees fail in the November-December timeframe last year, and a couple of staff go on maternity leave and go in non-operational. And so it's a fairly tactical number, which is why we're looking to oversupply by 3 or 4 extra controllers above what our requirement is to give us that buffer and also enable an on-call capability.
All right, I might put some more on notice about this. I've just got a couple of mates texting me saying there's no light. They had no lightning in Sydney this morning. There was some light rain. I mean, what? Yeah, where? How do you rely? Who makes a decision that lightning shuts the airport?
Senator, as I said, there was lightning in the terminal area. I was in the terminal, causing diversions.
So
this morning.
Who makes that decision?
Well, the airport doesn't close as a result of that. What happens is that pilots elect to divert around particular locations.
So pilots do, not yourself?
No, that's right, Senator. The pilots are able to appreciate the weather picture far better than we are from an air traffic control perspective in the terminal area, where we're doing it using a radar rather than visually in the tower. And so those diversions cause a slowdown because we're not able to have people on predictable flight paths, or pilots on predictable flight paths, and so we necessarily have to slow down.
Yeah, sure.
Could I just ask a follow-up to that? I sat on the tarmac at Sydney Airport for an hour the other day, and the crew told me it was because there was lightning within, I think it was 20 kilometres of the terminal, and so the terminal staff won't go out to do luggage and all that, safety, I get that.
Correct.
So who makes that decision?
There's actually sensors on the ground, and they actually pick up if there's a lightning threat within the area.
At what distance?
And there's flashing lights that occur, and as soon as those lights flash, anyone that's on the apron has to come off. And then once the storm passes and the lightning is not being sensed anymore, then the apron recommences. But that's an automated process.
And what distance is that from the terminal?
Sorry?
What's the radius?
What's the radius? I'd have to take on notice what the exact distance is.
It's not a process that Air Services is
It's actually run
in.
by the airport, it's not by Air
Run by
Services.
the airport, okay.
Right. Okay. A little bit perplexing.
Well, I'll take the safety side. Anyway.
Yeah, okay. You say it closed due to weather, but what was your staffing level at Sydney?
Sorry, Malcolm.
Well, the airport diverted. Sorry, okay, diverted due to weather this morning. What was your staffing levels at Sydney today?
Senator, we had sufficient staffing for the demand that was there. I don't know the precise number, but it would have been the normal levels.
But presumably once things start getting delayed, then to catch up, there needs to be potentially a greater capacity.
No,
Did your staff limitations stop that at all?
No,
from
Senator,
playing catch up to
Senator, the catch up process that you're referencing is capped at Sydney at 80 movements per hour.
Yeah, but were there 80 movements at this time? I mean, there's not 80 movements every hour though, is there?
No, the demand isn't always there for 80 movements, but we don't necessarily need more staffing to catch up. I don't know what the rolling demand was through the day, but as I said, I made the inquiries this morning, and the issues at Sydney Airport today were not due to our staffing.
There's a lot of complaints I see that you guys are classifying shutdowns as weather when it's actually staffing. Are you familiar with those
Senator, we have a very transparent process where we provide information.
It's not my question. It's not my question. It'd be a lot quicker and easier at this time of night, particularly if you just answer my questions. My question is, are you familiar with those complaints?
I am familiar that there have been those complaints, and we have a robust process, and we engage with airports and stakeholders to provide the data that they seek, so we can step them
Is
through
there any
what we're
independent
doing.
oversight over
Yes,
your
we have.
decisions?
We have a set of business rules that we apply, and we had those audited by the International Air Transport
But
Association.
their rules, is there any independent oversight of your decisions
So
or your reporting against those rules?
The rules are applied on a daily basis to have a look at any delays or any cancellations at any of the major airports to make a determination as to.
Can we just go back to my question? Is there any independent oversight of the way in which you apply the rules?
The oversight is through an industry process where we have a Wednesday weekly meeting where we make clear all of the attribution we're proposing is ours versus weather or other causes. And there is a feedback loop that's able, like a clearinghouse, if you will, where there is able to be feedback to challenge us.
But obviously,
on any of that.
at those meetings, there are people saying, you know, you're full of crap. And what happens then?
Senator,
What happens then? Like, so nothing
Senator,
happens?
I don't think that's the case.
If I actually, downloaded the data from the planes that were incredibly frustrated as the passengers land, not just in Sydney, but right around the country, the feedback loop would be pretty clear, Mr. Curran. Are you getting a sense of the feedback loop from Australian aviation travellers about the frustration with Air Services Australia? It's not just your former CEO that, thankfully, this Senate estimates process saw the back of. It wasn't the government that sacked this guy. It was the public outrage at the behaviour of Air Services Australia over many years that saw him exit. What are you doing that is changing the culture of Air Services Australia?
So we're doing a number of things.
Other than the Wednesday meeting and the feedback loop.
Senator, I was referencing that specifically to answer Senator Canavan's question. I think the primary focus on our plan has been to recruit air traffic controllers to address the shortage that we had previously, and we're well progressed on that. As I canvassed earlier, we've got 91 new air traffic controllers in the system in the course of 2025, which is a record for us, and we're continuing to recruit similar numbers this year.
Senator, this is not just about the numbers of people. We actually are back to more air traffic controllers than we were pre-COVID. There are rostering systems, there's traffic flow improvements, there's a raft of what I'd call a package of stuff that we're working on, which will make a big difference and has. Just before you came in, we were talking about the improvement during 25. It's quite substantial. The industry recognises it. Are we there? No, because we're not doing it consistently, and we acknowledge that. Yes, we're recruiting more to have some standby staff. That alone won't solve the problem. It's not just about heads. But we do have a number of initiatives that are underway, and in the coming months, the public will see the benefit of that work.
Minister, at what point
Madam, are you still going?
do we recognise that Air Services Australia is no longer fit for purpose in the 21st century?
I'll come back to you.
You've sat here for many, many years. Whether it's the Greens, whether it's the National Party, whether it is the Labor Party in their particular seats, Air Services Australia hasn't been fulfilling its role in assuring swift and efficient operations of our aviation sector. Is the government actually examining their role in a future aviation system as it currently exists?
Thanks for the question, Senator. Well, I can certainly say the government is employing more air services controllers, given how, when you were in government, you ripped the industry out by reducing the number of air services controllers across the country. So, of course, we are. And as we've just heard with Mr Sharp, throughout COVID, we know what you did in terms of reducing the numbers, and the 91 staff that have been employed in the last 12 months will go a long way to making a big difference.
So nothing
and to rectify what has happened when you're in government.
So nothing should change, Minister. You back Air Services Australia?
I can certainly say that we won't rip
the services out in
So I'll take
terms
that
of
as a yes.
air
I'll take
services
that as a
control, air controllers, Senator.
I'll take that as a
So
yes.
nice to see you, Senator.
Okay, so I say. Now, let's just get back. Senator Canavan has the call, then on those. Senator Delegate has a
Just
question.
wanted to go on to back to the privatisation stuff.
Have you got it? Who's got it?
So I'm just trying to understand this financial proposal. You said earlier that you want to get an upfront payment or an upfront contribution to these capital upgrades, and then you're going to pay back over time a tariff. Is that correct?
Correct.
What is a tariff in this context? What does that
Effectively,
mean?
it's repaying for the actual financing cost, if you like.
Right.
That's their return. So at the moment, we effectively do that. We have $2.9 billion of debt, which we raise through the bond market, and we pay interest. It's a very similar thing. It's just that we're paying it through a long-term arrangement with a sovereign fund. They'll have a mix of equity and debt in there. We're working through, is there a value in doing this? Typically, you would say for a Commonwealth entity, you would just use government funds, AAA rated. How could this be beneficial? What it does do is it accesses funds at a very competitive price and enables the pull forward of this infrastructure. And that delivers a whole lot of benefits. We need to be able to demonstrate to the Department of Finance, the Department of Infrastructure as well as government that there's actually value for money in this. We're working on that at the moment. A decision hasn't been made because we haven't finalised that part of the negotiation. Prima facie though, we'd only be doing this if we felt there was going to be a substantial benefit in doing so.
But this is just a bond then, basically.
Well, it's a financing arrangement. It's a bit like going out to the bond market.
You get an upfront
and paying
payment and you
interest.
pay it back over time.
Correct.
It's a corporate bond.
It's a bit more complex than that, but it's very similar in its nature. Someone's paying for the capital and we're paying it back.
Are there payments linked to your performance, financial performance or otherwise, or the tariff, so to speak?
There is, correct, yes. There's risk in it for them in terms of volume, and what we are aiming to do to de-risk this for air services is that it actually ties back in with the 5-year pricing arrangements that we actually have with our airlines. And if you want to talk to that in a bit more detail, I'll ask my CFO to run through that. But basically, because the airlines pay for this infrastructure, we will be looking to ensure that it's fully recovered through those arrangements.
Right. So obviously the yield, to the extent you calculate that on this financing arrangement, would have to be higher than the government bond rate.
A combination of that plus the benefits. So it's a value for money.
Can we just, it's like nearly 9
It's
o'clock
not
or
just
something.
the
Can we just answer the
interest cost.
question? Would the yield be higher than the government bond rate? Have to be, surely.
It will be.
Yes, okay,
correct.
thank you.
Yeah.
That's all.
But what I'm saying is there's a package then of other benefits that actually make create
But that
value
higher
proposition.
yield that the Commonwealth as an entity, as a whole of government entity is bearing, in this case, will be passed through to the airlines.
Along with the other benefits that we get. So the reason this is interesting...
just because the benefits are separate, right? It doesn't matter, the financing, it doesn't matter how you finance something, the real world benefits are the same. But that higher yield is going to be transferred to the airlines, which will be transferred to airline customers. So I'm not understanding now, for you guys and finance, happy days. Doesn't matter if the yield's higher, great. We can.
The airlines would not agree.
No, hear me out. No, because it's happy days because the debt doesn't look as big on the Commonwealth balance sheet. All right, so the figure in the Treasury report looks a bit lower.
It will.
The high yield costs you have to take get passed on to airline customers ultimately. But how is this a good deal for the Australian aviation user? What's in it for them?
At the moment, if we ran our current thinking on this and funding, it'd be probably 12 years to roll out this infrastructure.
But the government could borrow $2 billion. How much is it? Eight, sorry. The government could borrow $8 billion tomorrow.
Well, we'd have to, in terms of if you didn't go down this path...
The finance could do it.
You would end up with an equity and a bond market would be another way of funding it. So there would be a government
we've got $1 trillion in debt, so $8 billion ain't going to tank the market, right? But I know why governments like to do this because it's off balance sheet. That's why they want to do it. That's why the Department of Finance want to do it.
Well, there's an off-balance sheet
But in this case, often it's a taxpayer pays, but in this case it's going to be airline customers pay.
The benefits, Senator, are that investment gets pulled forward to somewhere between 5 to 7 years is what we believe we can deliver that.
But
Pulls forward economic benefits,
on what
jobs.
baseline are you doing the 5 to 7 year pull forward? Because tomorrow, the Department of Finance could go out and do a 10-year issuance of $8 billion. There'd be demand for it, and you could do it. You could do your investment, couldn't you?
We could.
And what year are you?
There's a policy question
for
for
scenario
government.
that you're saying you're pulling it forward 5 to 7 years?
Senator, there's policy options that we're presenting the government effectively. So we're saying there's...
It's
there's
financial trickery to keep debt off the government's books. That's what it is. I've seen it all the time in government, but yep, someone else pays for it. Okay, I'll leave it there, Chair.
All right, thank you. I take it that... No, you're not. Really? Senator Colbeck.
I think we're only 7 minutes behind, 10 minutes behind.
Don't give me the stink eye. Senator Colbeck.
Just an update on the implementation of the new flight paths into Hobart Airport.
Senator Colbert, Jackie O'Day, Chief Risk, Noise and Environment Officer, Air Services Australia. In terms of the update for Hobart, so we have engaged on the preferred design for recommendation 4, which I believe we discussed at last estimates. We did that in November and December, and feedback closed on the 11th of January. We're assessing that feedback now as part of our overall consideration of the proposal, and we expect a decision to be released before the end of June this year in relation to recommendation 4.
So final decision end of June.
That's correct, yes.
When does that translate to... I think we did talk about this last time. So there's another 9 months after that for...
Approximately, possibly 6, up to 9. It will depend on where we land in terms of the recommendation, but yes.
So based on the feedback so far, are we content with the current proposal? Preferred proposal?
We are still assessing the feedback at the current time, Senator, so I really can't give an indication as to which way that might land.
And it won't be until the end of the financial year before you finalise your thinking on that?
Most likely, yes, Senator.
If there are no further questions, why are you looking at me like that? You will ask about the Bridgewater Bridge. That's all right.
Across the Bridgewater Bridge. I did talk about the Bridgewater Bridge.
Sorry. I'll just leave you with this, Mr Sharp. Of course, as you would be aware, Air Services is no stranger to this committee. We've had interactions, the good, the bad, the ugly and the very ugly all over these years. And I do hear the challenges, but you don't have any competition either. Just noting, okay? Well, the pandemic, you know, that's what I'm talking about. Thank you, goodbye.
Thank you.
And we'll call CASA.
Malcolm, do you have a CASA question?
I don't ever go and claim that Matt's one who wants to fly in an electrical storm.
I know.
Yeah.
I was on someone was on a plane, got hit by lightning there not long ago, they'll tell me. You don't be scary on a ship. Hello. Now, I really don't want to, but I'm going to ask you. Hello, welcome. Do you want to make a brief opening statement? If not, I'll go straight to Senator Roberts. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for appearing again tonight. This one really disturbs me. Isn't it true that CASA relied on a conflicted officer, Mr Mark Lewis, whom the Fair Work Commission found had a personal vendetta against his former employer, Mr Barker, and evidence was not credible, essentially lies, to take actions that severely harm Mr Barker and his staff and his company?
Senator, Pip Spence, CEO, Civil Aviation Safety Authority. I'm aware of the issue that you're referring to, and I would say that certainly CASA did not do things as well as we should have done in relation to some of the issues that Mr Barker's been involved in, but I do not agree with the way in which you've described it then.
Isn't it true, thanks Ms Spence, isn't it true that Mr Lewis was allowed to work on matters involving his former employer, CASA, knowing it was an obvious conflict of interest, and dishonestly tried to hide this fact, with Mr Lewis and his manager, Mr Scott Duffy, giving false or misleading evidence to the Commission?
Senator, again, I don't agree with the way in which you're describing it. I'm not saying that CASA was without fault, but we did have appropriate conflict of interest arrangements in place, and we're looking into the issues that Mr Barker has raised about the misleading evidence that was provided to, or the assertion of misleading evidence that was provided to the Fair Work Commission, but we're looking into that at the moment.
Ms Spence, it must be serious because you've admitted the slightest hint of responsibility, which I've never seen before, and you have also said that you're looking into it. Well, that's not good enough. Isn't it true that CASA, relying on Mr Lewis's false claims that Mr Duffy knew were false, pursued heavy-handed enforcement, including criminal allegations and jail threats, that effectively shut Mr Barker's business down and put his staff out of work?
No, that's incorrect, Senator.
What do you say is correct?
As I said, there are issues that we should have done better. I do not accept the assertions being made about CASA staff taking the kind of actions that you've just described. I think there were lessons that we've learnt around how we should manage conflict of interest, which does happen.
What are those lessons?
I think it's around the perception of conflicts of interest and making sure that we're closely monitoring how often these can happen. But I guess one of the things I would say, Senator, is in order to have people with the appropriate qualifications to operate as inspectors within the organisation, they do need to have industry experience. We do have sort of strong conflict of interest mechanisms in place, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be monitoring them even more closely.
Are you saying that integrity can be cast aside for industry experience?
Sorry?
Are you saying that someone's integrity can be ignored if he's got industry
Senator,
experience?
I'm definitely not saying that.
Isn't it true that CASA regularly removed or downgraded Mr Barker's firm UAS Pacific's licence privileges without proper process and then sat on routine approvals for months or years, choking what was left of the business, destroying goodwill and reputation and driving clients away?
No, Senator, that's not correct.
Isn't it true that multiple substantive bullying complaints were only dropped by the Commission because CASA promised to change its behaviour going forward, not because CASA's past behaviour was found acceptable by the Fair Work Commission?
Senator, there was a commitment that was made around the engagement between the two staff members that Mr Barker had raised concerns with, but I would not agree with the way you've described the outcome from the Fair Work Commission, where they, I think, first of all, determined they didn't actually have jurisdiction on the matters being put to them, which is not the same as saying there was a guilty verdict in terms of the way our staff had behaved. And I do not accept the allegations.
I'm advised
that
that the Fair Work Commission found a personal vendetta against Mr Barker from his former employee.
I would have to check the transcript, but I do not accept the way you've described the outcomes from the Fair Work Commission.
Isn't it true that CASA failed to hold anyone to account for bullying and giving false or misleading statements to the Commission, effectively condoning that conduct as Mr Barker and his staff remained unsatisfied?
As I said, there is one element that we are looking into around the question of what information was provided to the Fair Work Commissioner, but in terms of the outcome of the process, I do not accept the way that you've described the way in which the matter's been handled.
What's the conflict of interest you've unearthed? Or the work that you need to do on conflict of interest?
No, sorry, the conflict of interest, as I said, we were aware of the issues relating to Mr Lewis, who'd been a former employee of Mr Barker, and we did have conflict of interest arrangements in place. That's not the issue that I'm referring to. I do understand there were some comments that were made in the Fair Work hearing that we're looking into to see if they were misleading. We think that we do not consider that they actually impacted the outcome of the Fair Work hearing, but we are looking into it because, to your point, integrity is important. We want to make sure that no one has said anything that could be misleading to such an important organisation as the Fair Work Committee.
Isn't it true that CASA has left false accusations on file about Mr Barker, his company and staff, without correction, annotation or apology, allowing CASA to keep seriously hurting their ability to work and earn?
No, Senator, we have, and we have advised one other person who was in a similar situation. There was one issue where the original allegation was subsequently withdrawn, and that was provided in writing. And we have taken whatever efforts we can do without destroying official documents to make it clear that, one, people can't access our system to find the original assertion that was made, and two, that if anyone was to get access to it, it would be very clearly marked to say that this matter was overtaken by subsequent events.
Isn't it true that an independent probe into alleged CASA's remotely piloted aircraft system, drones, branch wrongdoing was finished on 12th of December 2021, and CASA refuses to release it or carry out all recommendations? And isn't the real reason that public release would confirm systemic wrongdoing inside the CASA's remotely piloted aircraft systems branch?
No, Senator. The report that you're referring to has been considered within CASA. It was prepared for CASA. It looked at the way in which we were undertaking our regulatory arrangements. It identified reforms that we could implement, and we're working our way through those. Some of them we didn't accept, but that's perfectly reasonable to make sure that we're looking at how we do our work and we're improving things as we need to.
Can we have a look at that report?
Senator, can I take that on notice, please?
Sure. Isn't it true that the combined effect of CASA's conflicts of interest, discredited evidence, process breaches, suppressed report, punitive actions and leaving false allegations on file shut down UAS Pacific and left its people unemployed, consistent with an intent to destroy Mr Barker to hide CASA's failures?
As I said, Senator, I do not accept the way in which that you have presented it. We've had ongoing engagement with Mr Barker, and I know that anything that I say he will disagree with, but we've looked at these issues very seriously, and those areas where we have identified potential less than appropriate behaviour, we're looking into those. But I do not accept the way that which you're describing how those events occurred within the organisation.
Well, it seems to me, I'd ask the question, how can anyone trust CASA? We have so many complaints, serious complaints, from people in the aircraft industry about CASA. CASA's lack of ethics, violation of laws, violation of and abuse of authority and misplaced public faith.
I think I might take that as a statement, Senator Roberts.
It is a statement.
Yeah. Do you have...
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Senator Roberts. Yeah, Senator Canavan.
Thank you. Just want to ask some questions. I believe you signed an MOU with the Australian Space Agency last month?
Yep.
Or 2 months ago now?
Yep.
Yeah. What's the details of that?
It was really around, there's sort of a... the roles and responsibility of the Space Agency versus the roles and the responsibility of CASA as something leaves the ground and gets into the area that the Space Agency is responsible for, making sure that we work together in a coordinated way. I think we learnt a lot from the Gilmore space launch about how sometimes there was a bit of duplication in the way in which we were working with the organisation, and sometimes timeliness being very clear. So the MOU is really a mechanism to make sure that we've got a clearer way of working together and making sure that we're making it easier for the proponents so that they're not being sort of not from regulator to regulator.
Right. So I was going to ask about that, the Gilmore experience. Is that the only rocket launch that's happened in Australia, or recent times at least?
That's the most significant one that we've had. I think depend on how you describe a rocket launch.
How far they go in.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. It's up to airspace. So what's the process? Well, now even post MOU, you have a role to approve such a flight.
Yeah, we have. And again, happy to provide on notice a more detailed description of what CASA's role is, but it's largely around what happens between launch and into the space agency, and then there's the air risk. So for any other users in the vicinity, how do we make sure that there's appropriate information being provided, the relevant the NOTAMs, the notice to airmen that go out, so that people know what to expect, when to expect it in terms of a launch.
And what about the space agency? How do you interface with them? What's the points of cooperation needed? Right.
Yeah, Senator Andreas Marcello, Executive Manager, Stakeholder Engagement. So historically, CASA most of our dealings in this space were around model rockets and smaller devices, so it was largely managed by our sports team. So the delineation we have is for a rocket that doesn't go above 100 kilometres above the surface, that's within our domain, or if the rocket is under a certain power. So if it's a certain power or if it goes above that altitude, then there's an interaction with both agencies. Otherwise, it's wholly within our space. And as Ms Spence said, we look at risk to other airspace users and risk to ground, people on the ground, people in property. And that MOU that we're working through at the moment is really about, like Ms Spence said, trying to get rid of the duplication. So if the Space Agency, for example, has assessed ground risk, that we don't duplicate that and assess ground risk as well. So we're trying to make sure that we don't double up and that we streamline approval processes.
Okay. All right. Yep. Because I was going to ask about the Gilmore experience. I spoke to them during the time, and look, they never got too angry, but it did seem to take a while for them at times, and it seemed a little frustrating, as sometimes these processes can be. So obviously you've, I think, highlighted there were some duplication in that process, and you think going forward it will be quicker or better, is that right?
I think so, and I think also just clarity in what it is we actually need from the proponents. So I think we did actually have a session with us, Airspace Agency and Gilmore, so we could have a proper conversation about what worked, what didn't work, and make sure we took the sort of the user's experience as we worked through what should go into the MOU. And now the two organisations are meeting regularly just to work through these issues, and also obviously with any other proponents who are seeking to do a launch.
What about with international regulatory authorities? I think they had some delays there as well.
Look, I think that's probably one better for the Space Agency.
Right, okay. Have you got any applications at the moment to launch rockets over 100 kilometres?
I'd have to take that on notice. I'm not aware of anything, but
is the Gilmore, the one you've done for Gilmore out of Bowen, is that sort of for multiple launches, or do they have to come back every time they want to launch?
I think it was just the one, because I think one of the other issues is, as Mr Machulia was saying, because of the ground risk and air risk, everyone is unique in that sense. So, because depending on what the circumstances will be, we'll need to be working closely. Different things will need to be considered in relation to each
Presumably, you're obviously aware that it's also a highly financially risky endeavour for these companies, and
very
technology that's clearly very important for our country. So,
and I think
wouldn't want
again,
to put unnecessary barriers in front of it. Yeah.
And sort of maybe while we wouldn't give a sort of a blanket approval, what we would do is not revisit things that had been approved and still stood for the next launch. You'd be looking at the things that are different.
Okay. Have you is the Department of Defence involved at all?
I think on the airspace things, yeah. So, Senator, I think when it comes to airspace activity, we would talk to them as one of the stakeholders for a particular launch. So, yeah, there's cooperation with them as well.
Okay. Do they, if they're doing their own missile tests, would any of their missiles or defence capabilities breach this 100 kilometres? Do they have to seek your approval, or they go ahead and they've got their own arrangements?
I wouldn't want to... Sorry, Senator, if we can take that on notice.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Okay. I did have actually... sorry, bear with me. Yeah, just quickly, I think there's a bit of reporting around the Matt Wright tragic incident. Are you a party now to the court case or some court action in regards to that?
We are for, I think, the civil claim.
It's a civil case? Civil claim?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's still before the courts?
That's correct.
All right. Is that identified as a contingent risk in your
it would be, Senator. I don't know how far we break it down, but we do sort of have legal contingencies.
Okay, you'll obviously not answer any more questions about that. And finally, I think you had your statement of expectations updated as well, just before we met last time. Has there been any major changes in that?
Nothing sort of fundamentally different. Some of the key initiatives have been updated to reflect the white paper, and some things that have been completed have been taken off, but it's, you know, in line with previous expectations, and we've actually released our statement of intent as well about how we'll give effect to the statement of expectations.
One of which is to work with a space agency. That seems to be a change.
Yes, that's right.
Ticked already done that. What's One Sky to work with?
The with Air Services, the single civil military air traffic management system.
Right, okay. Like an interface between military and civil?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And finally, I should have asked for the space stuff. What about low Earth orbit? So you got any role? Low Earth orbit satellites, sorry. Do you have any role with that?
Senator, most of it will be about the re-entry, the re-entry of satellites as they come back in and out.
Right.
Yeah, so re-entry. So we'll quite often get notified about re-entry, and we'll make sure that people are aware of that in case there's debris and other things like that. So typically, it's we don't launch much, but we often have things come back. Yeah.
How many have fallen on Australia in last year? So.
Oh, look, we'd have to get the numbers for you, but they're not extraordinary numbers, but they're not insignificant numbers. My guess would be a couple of months in that order, but we can get the numbers for you.
But it's also like our responsibility goes beyond just the Australian landmass, but sort of in the waters around as well, and often it
territorial.
That's a guess.
Are they controlled or are they just dropping?
So a lot of them are controlled to a point, so they can get it. I think control it to a certain altitude, and then beyond that, once it starts to re-enter the atmosphere, I think they quite often don't have the control. Others, I think, don't have control at all. So we get notified of where they are, as does Air Services Australia, to make sure that people are aware of it.
But that's our biggest issue, is to make sure if we get an indicator that, because there's official processes for letting us know, and if we understand there may be space debris coming into a particular area, we do the, again, the NOTAMs, but that doesn't mean we're monitoring what's coming in. We're just warning people that this is potentially going to be in the area. Proceed with caution.
What, they like SS Enterprise or?
I think you're going well beyond what my understanding of low orbital satellites are. Sorry, Senator.
No, I think so. They typically try to be guided out into the oceans.
Ocean.
Oceans, yeah. So most of the entry happens out in our territorial waters or in our administered airspace.
Presumably they've got a radius, do they, when they tell you? It's like we're not exactly sure it'll hit this coordinate, but it will.
We can certainly take on notice a way of better describing our role in this area.
And maybe if there's any other agencies involved too, presumably with assessing these risks. Okay.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Senator Canavan. If there's no further questions, Ms Spence and crew, thank you very much. Ciao. And we will call Western Sydney Airport. Now, we do have a smoko break penciled in for 9, but I'll be led by the committee if you want to take the break or keep going, finish, then take a later break.
These guys, and we don't have AMSA, right? So why don't we just do these guys, take a quick break, and then wrap up the rest?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It won't be more than 15 minutes, I'd say.
All right. Western Sydney, where
Did you
are
ask
we?
questions of
Western Sydney?
No.
Airport.
James.
Hello, sorry.
That's right.
Oh, there we go, Mr Hickey. Sorry. Hello, how you going?
I'm very well, thank you, Senator.
If you'd like to make a brief opening statement, but if you don't, we won't yell at you. Okay,
No, straight to
fantastic.
questions,
Thank you. Questions, Senator?
Sorry.
Sorry, Senator Canavan.
Yes, thank you. There were some questions asked earlier. They weren't by me, so I'm trying to do it from memory. They were flicked to this area. So perhaps just start with an update on when will operations begin at Western Sydney Airport. I think you have some planes land, haven't you?
Yes, we have. So
Okay.
Simon Hickey, Western Sydney Airport. We had a emergency exercise last year, which included it was hundreds of people involved in that emergency exercise. We had 80 members of the public involved on the runway, all the emergency services, over 80 pieces of emergency equipment were involved. A big exercise, and we had an RFS 737 land. We have had smaller Piper aircraft land on the runway as well, so that was the last one that you're referring to, Senator. In terms of moving towards operations, we are on track to open in the second half of this year. We will open, our target is to open in July for freight operations, which is the smart way to do it, which is open the runway first, and we're working towards that. And we will open for passenger operations at the end of October. So they're our target dates.
Right, okay. And so what airlines will begin operating on those dates?
So launch airlines, which we've previously announced, is Qantas and Jetstar, and for domestic operations, Singapore Airlines and Air New Zealand for international operations.
And what routes will they fly?
So Singapore will fly to Changi and then to hundreds of destinations around the world, of course, Air New Zealand obviously to Auckland, and then connecting to all of North America and beyond. The Jetstar and Qantas networks are to be announced by Jetstar and Qantas because they're more complex in terms of where they will be going.
Okay.
So they are working on that announcement.
Right, okay. All right. I was talking to my colleague, Senator McGrath, earlier today, and he's been wanting to go and visit the airport, but apparently he's been denied that opportunity. Are you aware of that?
So I'm aware, Senator, that he did turn up, and we are not an open to the public airport, and we are in fact in a testing phase. So we do have lots of people we have lots of bags, we're putting them down the system, we're checking that when we put something in a bag that should, pass the scanners, that it gets picked out, everything's meeting its destination. The airport is in full test mode across the airport, so it's not open to the public at this point in time. With prior arrangements, we are happy to organise to do that, but there is still a lot to do. We are fitting out the retail, we're fitting out the food and beverage within the terminal. We've got to set up all the parking, all of the parking barriers, etc. We're engaged in a lot of activity across the airport, and as a result of that, it is not open to the public. When it opens to the public, it will be. The Experience Centre has been set up from the beginning of the build, and that continues to be open to the public and welcome. And with prior arrangements, we're obviously happy. And what we have done is organised, because there is a lot of interest, as you can imagine, Senator, in the airport. So we've organised that we offer days, particularly where we take local, state and federal politicians who are interested, and they are offered, and I believe we've offered the Senator that, and he has taken that up.
Okay, all right, good to hear.
What it's like to be a union organiser.
Good to hear. No, you're allowed to walk on whenever you like. Just another question about the $16 million Aviation Attraction Fund. Have you made any, have you allocated any funding from that or paid money from it to other airlines?
So the Aviation Attraction Fund for WSI, yes, we have used that with the international airlines, and we continue to use it in discussions with other international airlines. It's been very helpful. Particularly for a new greenfield airport and the marketing funds that come with that. It's essential that they get that message out, that this is actually a Sydney-based airport and it's open for operations and it's got connectivity, etc. So it's a very important part of bringing the greenfield airport to life, and we have definitely been using it.
Right. So how much have you spent some money from that? Have you paid money from that fund to these international airlines?
We have allocated it in the discussions with the airlines. I'd have to take on notice the specific amounts for specific airlines, but generally, Senator, I would say that we would keep that commercial in confidence as to the allocation of the $16 million, but because it's part of the wrapped up in the commercial discussions we have with different airlines.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you need a good reason to not tell us how much you've spent.
We can
so far, it's public funds. So
as opposed to telling you by airline,
fair enough.
I would
I can understand
be able to
that.
tell you what we have allocated of the total fund.
Okay, thank you. And are both Singapore and Air New Zealand beneficiaries of the fund?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay,
yes.
And you're in discussions with others?
And we're in discussions with others, yes.
Okay,
yes,
all right. All right, well, that I think is all my questions, Chair.
Thanks, Senator Canavan. If there's no further questions, Ms Cole, thank you very much. It was painless, wasn't it? Mr Icky, thank you. Travel safe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll take a break.
Yeah, we've got 15 minutes. We'll let the staff stretch their legs and we'll be back in 15 minutes' time. There you go. Hansard Broadcasting, thanks very much. Welcome Mr Kopp, Mr Tucker and Ms Fox, and I can offer you to make a short opening statement should you want to, but I don't think you want to, do you?
Adam Kopp, Chief Executive, no.
Yeah, good on you.
Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr Kopp. Question, Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I wanted to ask about earlier we had a document tabled recommended emissions values. I'm not sure if this is from your report, but it seemed to be indicated to me from the department it was. So can you just confirm that the recommended carbon values for infrastructure assessment projects begin at, this financial year at $76 a tonne in 2023 dollars and rise to $377 a tonne by 2050?
Yes, I can confirm that, Senator.
So what does that mean in terms of a project? So if a project's doing discounted cash flow analysis and it's got creates some emissions in 2050, does that mean there's a negative value in its DCF to the tune of $377 per tonne of carbon in 2050?
So it's a it's a value to carbon that's used for both the costs and the benefits. So if there's a large amount of embedded carbon when you deliver the piece of infrastructure in the early stages, then you would apply that first value in the first few years. And then if you was saving emissions as the project comes into operation, then you would apply the later one and vice versa.
Right. What about the emissions from, say, an upgraded road which encourages more people to drive? Is that sort of indirect emissions from the increased driving captured in the DCF?
So a road tends to have lower embedded emissions than, say, public transport, but there would be benefits around people moving more quickly along the corridor, which would be a benefit where you would apply the value. But if there was induced demand, then that would affect the cost side as well. So it's trading off between the two sides of the BCR. So it's just a value that's applied to both sides.
But the use of petrol or diesel to drive on that road, the additional amount used, is that a negative?
Yeah, that would be a cost.
That would be a negative.
The value would be applied to the cost in that case. But moving more quickly through the corridor would be a benefit, and the value would be applied to that.
But the cost of this is valued at $377 a tonne. So it's effectively a $377 carbon tax then on that driving activity in 2050.
No, it's not a tax because it's a social cost benefit analysis as opposed to a financial.
But it's a negative. It's going to reduce the benefit of that road and therefore make it harder to be assessed as a positive under your analysis.
The cost, the impact, if there are emissions, that would be applied negatively, and if it was saving emissions, it would be applied positively. And what we've applied it since February 2024 across about a dozen business cases. We found the impact has been relatively marginal. And the issue, these carbon values have been around for a long time, but they've been inconsistently used, or they've been focused on different jurisdictions, so it might be applied to only the Queensland jurisdiction because of their targets. So what we've done through this piece of work is standardise in alignment with federal law what the least cost would be to achieve the targets set at federal law.
Right. Okay, so you said 12 projects. Can you give me a list of those 12?
Sure, sir. It would be the last 12 or so. So I can take on notice for the definitive answer, Senator, but just to give you an indication, it's the last 12 or so that we've done. Yanyin Road, Upgrade Stage 2, Paradise Dam, Mamre Road, Upgrade Stage 2, High Speed Rail, Elizabeth Drive, East and West. I mean, I can go on.
So can you tell me what would have been the NPV with the carbon values and what would it be with carbon values at zero? for those projects?
I'd need to take that on notice, but I do have an example. For instance, the Kennedy Highway in regional Queensland, that had a negative 0.29% impact on total benefits. And the Mamre Road upgrade in suburban Sydney, it had a negative 0.9% impact on total benefits.
Right.
So it's relatively marginal.
Negative 0.29, is that
negative
on the BCR or?
On the BCR, yeah.
Well,
negative 0.9%.
Negative 0.9?
Yeah.
Sorry. 0.9 or 0.09?
0.9%.
Yeah, I suppose the percent's throwing me because a BCR is just typically expressed as
We're
a
happy to
ratio.
take on notice.
So is it
exactly
percent or is it 0.9 in an absolute sense? You see what I mean? A BCR is not a percentage, so I'm just getting a bit confused.
Yeah, David Tucker, I'm Chief of Project Advisory Evaluation. It's a percentage variance.
So it's 0.9% reduction in the
Correct.
BCR.
So it's very, very small effect on the total BCR or NPV, whichever you'd like to look at it.
Right, okay. Well, if you could get that for me, that'd be great. Sort of wonder then why we bother doing it then. Why, if it's so small, what's the point of it?
It's really about standardising the approach. So there was federal law changed that, and our law was changed, our legislation was changed, that we had to have regard to the federal law. And when we were doing analysis, we found that there was a very inconsistent use of these values. There's hundreds of values that are used in social cost benefit analysis, and this is just one of them, but it was very inconsistently applied, and it made it basically impossible for us to follow our own legislation in terms of getting a consistent approach nationally. So we went through a process with CSIRO, ANU, Commonwealth Treasury to work through what would be a consistent approach to align with the federal government's legislative target, and then that was applied through the IDM process going forward.
Right, so just more red tape. Just what we need. Okay, so earlier today too, we asked questions about the Sydney to Newcastle rail. I believe you've just published a summary of the business case for that.
Yes.
And so what was the benefit cost ratio there?
Yeah.
So 1.1 to 1.
1.1?
Under the central scenario.
Okay.
Of 7%.
All right. And so was that done, was that assessing the business case, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. How much were the capital costs of the project?
The capital cost of the project was redacted because it was commercially sensitive.
I mean, what's the point of doing it? We don't, so the public can't know what the estimated cost of a major project is. How is that commercially sensitive?
Well, that would impact the ability of the Commonwealth Government to get value for money when it enters the market for the actual package of works.
We publish estimates of, how does this work? I mean, when you go and tender for a road project, the government announces in the budget, we've put aside X billion dollars for the road. How is it any different for a rail line?
I think because of the stage in which the project was at. So we have historically engaged with proponents around publication of capital cost. So we do have a history in the past of not publishing the capital cost if it is commercially sensitive, if they are about to enter the market. And that
sounds like it's politically inconvenient. That's why it's not being published. I mean, I don't understand the commercial sensitivity here. And I mean, I think given it was taxpayer dollars going towards this project, I'm not sure why this committee should not know that number. Because, as I say, with every other project the government announces to great fanfare, they say how much it's going to cost. And then they go and tender for it. And obviously it's a competitive process, so they might say it's a $1.5 billion road, but people have got to sharpen their pencils, and if they get below that, they'll pick the cheapest price. So how is it commercially sensitive to disclose what the estimated costs are? This far out too, obviously it's still a rough estimate.
So historically, we have done this, for instance, for Sydney Metro because they were about to enter the market, and the stage that High Speed Rail is at, we have agreed with them not to publish.
Are you about to enter the market? Is the government about to enter the market for Sydney Newcastle High Speed Rail?
We agreed with their proposal to enter into the next phase, the planning phase, and there is a decision before government around whether or not they will go forward with that.
On further planning, though, not on actually tendering for it to build it. So we're nowhere near. We're nowhere near actually asking for a tender to build the high speed rail because we've got to do more planning first.
So, Senator, sending a price signal out into the market, the issue raised was that would set an unreasonable price, particularly with the level of planning that had been done to date. So they've done a business case, but it's quite strategic at this stage, and they need to do more formalisation of.
I might just ask the minister for this on notice, and if you do come back and refuse this figure, I'd like a public interest reason for why this committee cannot have that figure. I mean, it's just crazy. Yeah, it's just absolutely ridiculous.
We'll take it on notice, Senator.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Yeah. Moving on to the Melbourne Metro Tunnel, I believe that had a cost-benefit ratio of 3.3, but I think it was done pre-pandemic. Has it been reassessed since the pandemic and potential changes to rail patronage?
No, Senator. We have a responsibility under the federal financial agreement where we assess the business case when they're seeking $250 million or more. So we don't have a trigger or a lever to go back and re-review the business case of a project once we've executed our responsibility.
What about suburban rail loop? Has that been reassessed since the pandemic?
We assessed that project about 6 months ago.
12 months. Okay, so since the pandemic. What was the benefit cost ratio on that?
Senator, the business case for suburban rail loop was a combination of both suburban rail loop east and suburban rail loop north, and that had a reported BCR of between 1.1 and 1.7 at a 4% discount rate.
I love how they all come in at 1.1. Amazing. Okay. Has there been any assessments done of patronage of public transport since COVID? Any impacts on, say, work from home and these sort of things, changing projections of demand for public transport?
Most state governments do refresh their model over time based on real patronage outcomes.
So have you looked at that yourselves about this issue?
I might for you, but we haven't looked at it ourselves. Has there been any engagement with jurisdictions on that issue?
It'd be built into the modelling, the demand modelling that we see in business cases, and so we'd look at to what extent there is demonstrated a recovery from COVID, and then how that patronage is anticipated to change going forwards. So yeah, as Mr. Kopp said, most state and territories have been modelling that.
Okay, all right. All right, that's it for me, I think, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Canavan. If there are no further questions, thank you very much to Infrastructure Australia. And we will now call the Northern Australia Infrastructure Facility. Sorry. And then after Northern Australia, we'll have the ARTC and Inland Rail. And I'm trigger happy. Right. Okay. I'm that excited I've forgotten to record. Oh, okay. Well, welcome, Mr. Doyle, Mr. Land, Ms. Tupac, and Ms. Sritharan. Mr. Sritharan, I'm sorry. Welcome. Do you wish to make a brief opening statement?
We tabled it earlier today, Chair, so we'll be fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Tremendous questions. Senator Hodgson, no?
Thank you, Chair. Is NAIF aware of public statements by Comet Ridge that it is seeking and expects to be successful in obtaining NAIF financial support for the Mahalo gas project in Queensland?
Yeah, thanks, Senator. We are aware of the project. It's very early on in our stages, so we have given no commitment that we will fund that project. It still needs to work through our rigorous processes, and it's very early on in that project, in our process. So no, there's no commitment been given to NAIF, by NAIF.
So they've gotten a bit ahead of themselves, would you say? Or?
Yeah, if we're working with someone, we're very clear about what they can and can't say about. They're okay to talk to us, obviously, under our mandate. But yeah, they need to be very clear what our commitment and where we are in our processes, and I can assure you we haven't given a commitment to fund.
I suppose, can you confirm that NAIF is actively considering a concessional loan of up to $110 million for this project, and that a strategic assessment paper has been endorsed and the project is currently subject to due diligence? Is that, that's where it's up to?
Yes, it is, yes.
What is the current status of Comet Ridge's application? Can you please share with us how many assessment stages remain and what form of public finance is being considered?
In terms of the processes, after it gets through our strategic assessment phase, which you've noted, we go into comprehensive due diligence, and there's multiple stages in that, including consultation with government agencies, checking against all approvals. I would suggest if the due diligence phase, in a scale of 1 to 10, they're probably 1 or 2 on that scale, with a lot more work to be done, including comprehensive financial analysis, understand the construction cost risk and everything else. So it's reasonably early on, I would suggest. The next phase after that is if management deem it to be ready for full assessment, that would then go to the NAIF board as an investment decision. And then if that got through that process, then it goes to the minister for consideration for a veto or non-veto. That's the process.
Okay, and which government agencies are consulted? You mentioned.
We tend to go to all of them. Some don't have a lot of comments back, Senator, on things. Some are relevant, some aren't, but we tend to go to almost all of them as part of that Commonwealth consultation. We give them an outline of the project and then they come back and give us feedback. What we're looking for is, have we missed anything? Is there anything we should consider as part of the due diligence to make sure we haven't missed anything as part of our processes?
Okay, so fairly robust consultation with government agencies.
Yes, it is.
Can you confirm if you're aware that Santos stands to financially benefit from this project, including payments of up to $20 million that are conditional on gas production proceeding?
I might hand that over to the Chief Investment Officer.
Okay. This is Stephen Lamb, Chief Investment Officer, NAIF. In terms of the contractual arrangements, they're obviously commercial in confidence. So, I mean, it is public that Santos has been involved in the project, but I couldn't confirm as to whether your statement's correct going forward.
Can you confirm it on notice?
Well, in terms of, so as Mr. Doyle said, the project's still fairly early in the development phase. So as part of that, they're obviously working with various commercial partners. So in terms of where are they going to actually end up, we can't confirm that until such a point as agreements have been met and it's gone through our board process. So it's public that Santos has been involved in the project. But as to whether they are ultimately involved in the project, as you can imagine, it's quite a long process. There's a lot of commercial negotiations. So they may well be involved, but they may also fall out. So Comet Ridge is the proponent.
Okay, and I suppose how does NAIF justify considering, even in the early stages of a long process, providing public finance to a greenfield gas extraction project in light of its obligation to take into account Australia's emission reductions targets?
So, yeah, thank you. Our mandate's reasonably clear, so we follow through the process. So we are not excluded from looking at projects under our mandate. However, to your point, there's a lot of steps in the process to make sure that it meets all government policy. We check against all approvals and everything else before we reach investment decision. It isn't also, on the odd occasion, a project might reach an investment decision and then still, to Mr Land's point, still be looking for other funding to make up the full finance stack, and then they don't make it, so we don't get to financial close, which means we don't provide any funding. So these projects are very complex, so it's very early on. To Mr Land's point, is it's a moving, the targets and the numbers are all moving. We try to keep an eye on where that is and then understand through our process whether it proceeds or not.
And so projects' emissions or climate impacts aren't something that you'll take into consideration? But they are?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yes.
and is that a formal assessment stage?
Yeah, it's through the due diligence phase.
It's through the
Yes.
due diligence phase. I suppose to the Minister, you must be aware of the government's repeated public commitments that no public money would be used to fund new coal or gas projects, including Minister Bowen's statements that there would be no government finance for new coal and gas fields. In 2019, Senator Chisholm was asked whether Labor would support any taxpayer subsidy for fossil fuel projects and replied, absolutely not. It needs to stack up on its own terms. I suppose given that, how is a $110 million NAIF loan to a gas project, potential $110 million loan to a gas project, not a breach of that commitment?
I can take that question on notice, Senator.
Thank you. So, yeah, I've just come from DQ, and similarly they are saying that they're not expecting any government money to go towards these projects. Do you have a comment, maybe the department, on that?
Well, Nate, we're independent, but we must, as to your point, we must follow through and make sure every project meets all the requirements, all the approvals. Our mandate, investment mandate, allows us to look at projects and doesn't exclude projects that you've mentioned at the moment. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to make it through the process either. So if we didn't follow the mandate and didn't look at projects through our normal rigorous process, then we'd be against our mandate criteria as well.
It just seems unusual that we're going through this very lengthy consultation process when government policy, quoted by multiple ministers, is that no government money will go towards subsidising new coal and gas. And I'm sorry, this is probably more directed to the Minister than yourself, and a real, I suppose, misalignment between government policy and government messaging. Minister, will the Minister responsible veto the decision in the instance that it clears all of the other assessment stages to ensure that we're not giving public money to new coal and gas in 2026?
Senator, from what I understand with Mr Doyle's answers is that there is still a process underway. It would be preemptive of me to be able to respond to any of that, but I'm certainly happy to take it on notice with the Minister.
Thank you. It just seems strange to have a process that is in direct contradiction to government policy around not spending public money on coal and gas. But I don't think I'm going to get anything more this evening, so we'll wait to see what comes back on notice. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Kennedy.
So is there any ban on you from considering coal or gas projects under the NAIF?
No, there isn't under our mandate, right. Senator.
Do the projects have to meet a net zero target of any kind?
They just need to comply with any government policy over the life of the term of the loan and the life of the project.
Okay. But they don't particularly individually, you don't assess them to having to get to net zero?
No.
Okay. I had some other questions, particularly around the independent review that was provided to the Minister, I think, on the 12th of February last year. Has the government responded to the review?
Probably not a question for me.
We always get flecked to you guys, though, by the department, so that's the problem. You'd know, though. Has the government responded?
All we've known is the report was tabled, I think, in August, Senator, and there were some statements then from the Minister around support for NAIF's extension tenor by 10 years.
But no formal response on individual recommendations that you've seen?
No.
Particularly interested in a few of them. One of the recommendation one was to remove the time limit to allow NAIF to make investment decisions in perpetuity. Is that something the government has agreed to?
It's probably something for the government. Right. All I know is what the statement was when the report was tabled that suggested that it may be a 10-year extension.
Right. Yeah. But this is a different issue, isn't it? About there's the life of the organisation, and then there's how long you can invest for. Is that?
I
There's
think
two
it's the
distinctions.
same.
Right. I thought you could make loans beyond the life of your organisation.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. You're right.
Yeah.
So, just to add to Mr. Doyle's comments, so
Yep.
I mean, in terms of the tenor of our loans, we're constrained by the Commonwealth bond curve,
Yep, right.
which is 30 years. Historically, our projects have been well within that, and the tenor of the loan is really linked to the requirement of that project. So we don't lend long tenor just for the sake of it. It's really to ensure that the project is commercially viable. So loans could go anywhere from sort of 5 to 7 years in the short end, out to past 20 years in the long end, depending on the nature.
Have you issued loans for 30 years?
No, we haven't.
Okay. But that is the cap at the moment, effectively, because that's the longest tenor of government bonds.
Correct.
Okay. There was another recommendation 2, the next one, about allowing you to recycle funds that are repaid. Is that something that's going to come forward in this new legislation?
We haven't had any feedback. Obviously, we in our submission, which was public, Senator, we thought that was an advantage. Right. But it's also connected to, obviously, the access to the funds on the front end. The $7 billion is also on the government's balance sheet, or department's balance sheet, so the recycle of funds is linked to that as well.
Okay, and the third recommendation was to allow the NAF to refinance effectively existing loans on different terms without triggering a new loan investment decision. Any clarity on that at this stage? No. Are you being consulted on the legislation? Because my understanding will be needed. Well, we did have confirmed earlier today that there'll have to be legislation to extend the term of the NAF. Have you been consulted on that?
We are getting some questions, yes, through my Chief Legal Officer on some of the legislation potential changes.
It needs to be done by 30th of June, is that right?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay, well, time seems to be of the essence. Right, I might just flick down on the new CEO too. You have engaged, or the government has?
Yeah,
or
Mr.
did
Neil,
you, or the board does today, or
no,
who made the decision?
The board does the interviews and then recommends, and it's been signed off by the government. Mr. Neil McDonald starts on the 2nd of March.
Okay, all right. And so when do you finish up, Mr. Doyle?
The 13th of March.
Okay, well, congratulations. Thank you for your service. This will be your last estimates then. Okay, and you'll obviously have a bit of a handover period during that time. All right, well, thanks very much for your service, Mr. Doyle. Good luck in the future. And I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So to the officers of NAF, thank you very much. We'll let you go. We'll now call Australian Rail Track Corporation in Inland Rail. Following that will be High Speed Rail Authority.
Back again.
We're both back again.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Welcome, Mr Johnson. Mr Zambelli, do you wish to make a brief opening statement?
In the interest of time, Senator, probably not. Thank you, Chair.
Love your style. Thank you very much. Go straight to questions. Senator Canavan?
Yes, I have some questions on Whyalla. I believe you've got a contract with the Whyalla Steel Mill, is that right, for products?
Wayne Johnson, CEO and MD at ARTC. Yes, Senator, we do have a contract for the procurement of rail steel with the steelworks at Whyalla.
Okay. Obviously, there's been some pretty high-profile disruptions there in recent years. Has the provision of steel products to you have been impacted by those disruptions?
No, Senator. We've been closely involved with, obviously, management of the steelworks prior to the change in status of the organisation, and also the administrators post that. We've been extensively engaged in our supply contract, including our forward-looking inventory and offtake, and there's been no concerns at all.
Okay. Have you looked at any risk management options of if the steel mill were to not produce what you require? Have you got other options?
Senator, we look at a matter of course with a number of supply agreements around if they're single source within Australia, what are the alternative arrangements? And so that would be one area that we always look at, what are the alternative arrangements that we could procure and ensure supply of steel, given the nature of the work. And I think I can speak on behalf of Mr Zambelli. We have the contract that we hold is for both ARTC and Inland Rail, and both provisions of the ongoing business and also the project have been fully fulfilled over that period.
Okay. All right. What's the steel for?
It's the actual rail track themselves. So we've got a couple of different profiles. I won't go to the detail here of what goes to where across the country, but we have a high quality product comes out of Whyalla that satisfies most of the areas of Australia where we re-rail or whether there's greenfield placement of rail.
Only in greenfield sites you're using it for?
No, brownfield re-railing as well.
Okay.
Across the country.
So it's being used in the projects around the Inland Rail, for example?
Certainly.
Yeah, and all the Inland Rail materials were stockpiled on site at Whyalla. And we're in the process now of moving those to the projects.
Right. Do you use other steel rail or rail steel from any other mills around the world?
We do. We procure some specialised steel within a couple of locations within the network, which is a different metallurgy, and so that is acquired from Europe and comes to different points. But in most, our supply agreement is mostly through Whyalla at this point.
And Whyalla is the only location that can provide you those steel products in Australia?
Within Australia, yes.
Okay, well hopefully it keeps going. All right, I just want to ask about the assessment of the Gladstone to Toowoomba rail option. Spoke to the department earlier about that. It's been 2 years since the report was provided to government. Have you been asked for any comments on that business case, I think they called it?
Not on that business case, Senator. We're well aware of work that did take place, and it was probably preceding my role that took place, particularly with in the Queensland government as well, that looked at it. We have been heavily engaged with some private interests that are interested and talk about and are proposing different aspects or a concept about a rail line in that area. So we're pretty engaged with that organisation. We remain so.
Right, okay. Have you yourself looked at that report or reviewed it?
No, Senator.
Has the ARTC seen the report?
No, Senator, not to my awareness.
Right, okay. What's the latest on the Brisbane to Toowoomba options? Is that still being assessed as part of the broader Inland Rail project?
Would you like to talk first?
Yeah, it was one of the bilateral studies that you've probably been aware of. In the future, in the design of Inland Rail, we are to consider passenger capacity, but it is a freight line. And I believe the Toowoomba Council has been looking at that study and talking with the Australian government as well.
Okay, right. So I'm particularly interested, I suppose, in what happens from... Where is Inland Rail terminating at the moment?
Kangaroo, just east of Ebenezer, of the intermodal terminal.
And so, is there any work being done at the moment on upgrades between Kangaroo and the Brisbane port?
That's not part of the scope of our project at Inland Rail.
No, I know it's not the scope of your project, but there have been different studies, haven't there? Some of the bilateral studies into that issue. Thought it was Acacia Ridge to the port back then. This goes back a long way. But is there any work at the moment going on about those issues?
Senator, so Mike and the team continue with the project delivery at Inland. ARTC has been engaging with different ports, particularly in the East Coast, as well as and the state governments around what are the interconnection between the ports. And so that work, the detail of that work that has happened previously in Queensland is something of discussion for us that we're forecast we want to have some access to and understand through the course of this year.
Do you have an agreement with the Queensland Government for the Inland Rail for the areas west of Kangaroo?
The bilateral agreement still stands today around Inland Rail.
Is there agreed construction, design, timelines in that agreement?
The route selection has been agreed, and the work now to get through environmental impact studies along that route selection continues along that alignment today.
Who's taking charge of that?
So the Inland Rail team are working on those EISs from Gowrie down to Kangaroo.
Right. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. When do you expect to finish those?
It's going to be a couple of years' work to finish off those 3 EISs from Gowrie down to Kangaroo.
Wow. All right, okay. Been going for a while. All right. I've just got a question here from a constituent around the Wangaratta station. This person is probably a long-term listener, first-time caller. Are you aware that due to works being undertaken at the Wangaratta railway station as part of the Beveridge to Albury line, that buses can only park adjacent to platform 1, and therefore travellers who need to access platform 2 must do so by either using a set of steep stairs or using an underpass? Can you understand that for people who may have mobility issues or carrying heavy luggage, that lugging suitcases up a set of stairs or using the underpass that is quite a distance could cause problems? Are you aware of that issue?
No, thanks for the question, Senator. I'm not aware of that particular issue. I might have to take that one on notice.
Okay. Apparently there's been ongoing issues with the lift at that station as well.
I'd heard of the issue with the lift just recently.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think, if you could take that on notice and get back to this person, that would be, or we can get back to this person, that would be greatly appreciated. Okay. I think that's it for me for the AOCC.
Did you have a question? Senator Holland.
Good evening, gentlemen. I just want to quickly just turn to the good people of Millmerran and just get a bit of an update whether the project has been engaging with landowners, property owners, farmers, truck operators in the Millmerran area.
Our teams are actively out along the alignment in that area. Recently they've had a number of meetings with Genuity and looking at the possible options for the rail line with the Commodore mine and the power station in that area. But they're also actively in those areas, Pittsworth, etc., Millmerran. So our team on the ground certainly talking with the locals. We have an office in Goondiwindi and we have one in Toowoomba, so we have people close to the alignment. So to my knowledge, they're regularly out talking to the locals along the alignment.
And you mentioned the EIS process before. Is that being run by the project itself, or is it being run by the Queensland Government Coordinator General?
So, for instance, on the Border to Gowrie project, there was 200 responses to that. They are sent to the Coordinator General, and then we provide our responses to the Coordinator General. So our team is working through those at the moment to get the Coordinator General's approval Q2 this year.
Okay, so the Coordinator General in Queensland is assessing those submissions.
That's the process.
I understand the people.
The responses don't come to us from the public. They go to the Coordinator General, and then we need to respond to the Coordinator General.
Yes, because I understand those landowners submitted to that process put a lot of work into some hydrology reports about how water runs in the area and their local knowledge. So I just wanted to get an understanding that's now being considered by the Queensland Government through the Coordinator General.
That's right.
What are the next steps after that process?
So after we finish putting our responses into the Coordinator General, they're assessed. Once we then get approval from the Coordinator General, then it goes up to the EPBC final approval process.
Okay, all right, thank you, that was it.
Thank you. Mr Johnson, Mr Zambelli, thank you very much. I'm sorry, Senator Roberts, I got all excited. Sorry, Senator Roberts.
Near the end you get hurried, don't you?
No, I do get hurried.
You sniff it.
You're right. Take your time.
Thank you for appearing tonight. And have a good evening. My questions are on Inland Rail, Queensland Border to Gowrie specifically. This stage is at Phase 4 approvals. For 2026, ARTC anticipates increased activity with teams conducting more site investigations, surveys and updates as they work towards securing final environmental approvals. How much money has been spent on the Border to Gowrie section to date, and how much is expected to be spent before the first construction begins?
I'd have to take that historical data on notice. At the moment, we do have a design team engaged that's working on that Border to Gowrie section to get the next refinement of the design, and we're out there doing site investigations. I'd have to take on notice the total amount that we've spent over many years.
I can understand that, and also the cost to
and the cost
complete the design.
Yeah, yep.
It appears you're persevering with the route over a mountain and across the Condamine floodplain, which we've talked about many, many times, to get down to the Brisbane rail network, which will never be able to handle 1.8 kilometre trains or double-stack trains. Never. Why are you persevering with a route that will never get you to port instead of taking inland rail alignment to Port of Gladstone? There are many, many logistical benefits for the whole nation.
So the scope of inland rail is to go to Kangaroo, not to Brisbane Port, and double-stack trains to Ebenezer, then single-stack trains to Kangaroo. That is the scope. Inland rail does not go to Brisbane Port.
No, I understand that, but we were originally told port to port, Melbourne to Brisbane. That's what we were originally told was the vision of inland rail. It's not going to do it. You can go to the Port of Gladstone. And,
I'm just telling you the scope for
yeah.
Inland Rail is Beveridge to Kangaroo.
Yeah. You've got to follow orders. The Border to Gary section is 217 kilometres of mostly new track, 37 bridges, 3,000 culverts. How much will this cost?
The cost of that section is still being determined. We've provided some scope and design, schedule and cost estimates into the federal government, and that's a matter for the federal government and their assurance verification specialist that's working with them.
Oh, out there.
It's horrendous. Gary to Helidon, including a quote, vast new rail tunnel. They're Inland Rail words. Surely taking Inland Rail to Toowoomba shouldn't be considered until you sort the cost and engineering of taking it down the range. I put it to you that every cent you're spending on the Queensland route is completely wasted. If you can't get double-stacked freight to Brisbane, the whole business case is out the window, and your recent update about moving the intermodal from Kangaroo to Ebenezer acknowledges you can't get double-stacked trains, which you've admitted. To Brisbane itself, will you please continue work on costing the tunnel down the range, but otherwise spend your time, Minister, revisiting alternative routes for Inland Rail? There are so many other fine options that will benefit the country.
I'll take your question on notice, Senator Roberts.
Thanks, Minister. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Senator Roberts. Okay, Mr Johnson, Mr Zambelli, thank you very much. We'll let you go. We will now call the High Speed Rail Authority, then followed by National Heavy Vehicle Regulator. Senator Roberts, you have a question in this next area. Your name, please. What is it? No, High Speed Rail Authority. Okay. No Senator Roberts, no Senator Whitten. All right.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that, Chair.
No, don't be sorry. That's fine. Okay, let me just catch up, gentlemen. Bear with me. Mr Parker and Mr Alcantara. Hello, how are you going?
Good evening.
Did you wish to make a brief opening statement?
No.
No, thanks. Thanks very much. Questions? Senator Canavan.
Yes, thank you. Just asking about Newcastle-Sydney route. I believe a summary of the business case has been published. Is that correct?
That is correct, in November of last year.
What's the capital cost of the project?
At this stage, and we have been through this before, there is some confidentiality about the business case cost. There is also, until we get a direction from government, it's very hard to give and not mislead the Senate what the cost is. It's very hard to not mislead the Senate because the government has got to make a decision on the project and give us a direction, and they haven't given us that direction yet.
Yep, okay. But there is a capital cost estimate in the business case?
There's a range of costs depending on what government actually wants delivered.
Yep, okay. And look, we've been through this earlier and we asked the government, they'll get back to us on notice. So I'll just give you a summary. I see no rationale for you to deny that figure to the Commonwealth Parliament and to the Australian people when they paid for the business case. I mean, can you give me a good reason for why this is commercial in confidence?
As I said to you before, and I have said this at previous Senate estimates,
right.
Often government makes an announcement of the cost of a project when they announce the project.
But that's not commercial in confidence, that's just protecting the government.
We've not received...
How's that protecting the commercial interests?
Sorry, Senator.
Yeah.
What we've said is that we've given government a whole range of options. And what we're saying is that until government makes a decision and gives us a direction, then any figure I give you could be misleading.
I mean, I remember very well the, I think it was the Albanese government, Albanese when he was minister, did a report on Inland Rail. I think it might have been published by Warren Truss by the time the government changed. And it included a range of costs for the Inland Rail, all of which have proven to be massive underestimates. But I just don't understand how is this project any different from the practice that was put in place then. It was an Ernst & Young report, I remember. And it came out with a range. There was different options for the Melbourne to Brisbane Inland Rail. Why is there a different approach applying here to what was done for the Inland Rail project?
Well, currently the business case is with government to give us a direction.
Yeah.
It's not a commercial and confidence reason, though. There's no justification for that at all. It's not going to impact.
I think
it's not going to impact on the government's ability to tender for this project at some point in the future and have a competitive tension.
Well, it potentially could, Senator.
Just walk that through me. Walk that through for me.
No, I'll walk you through that. Yeah, that's fair enough. So one of the recommendations, very clear recommendation we made as part of the business case, and was supported by Infrastructure Australia, was to go through a development phase where we looked at firming up costs, firming up program, firming up benefits. Part of that development phase includes commencement of tendering a number of the packages of work. That's not 2 or 3 years away. That will be very months.
I'm not asking for the individual components. I'm asking for the total estimated capital cost.
I'm just telling you that.
Right. So that does not hold.
Well, that
does not hold.
That's,
I mean, I'm not.
That's fine, Senator.
As I said earlier too, governments regularly announce to great fanfare what they're spending on a particular road or rail project before they go to tendering.
What I'm saying is, generally when
it's almost a common practice.
I know, but that's usually when they've made a decision and they've actually made
the point. That means it's not a commercial and confidence consideration. The government's just trying to deny the Australian public the information.
But also giving us a direction on what
before it announces something.
No, but there is also an absolute undertaking not to mislead. And again, we have seen projects where announcements have been made.
It's not misleading. It's in your report. It's in the report. No one's saying it's going to.
There is a range of information in that report, Senator.
Yep.
And again.
Well, I'm not sure how that. I mean, I was given some information, but it's feeding
what I'm
information.
saying, so I've had this discussion before. There's a range of information in there, and we are waiting for a direction from government on what they would like us to do.
Yeah, but that's got nothing to do with. That's not a public interest reason to deny the Australian Parliament that information.
No, but there is, but
it's
also
not a public interest immunity.
No, I haven't.
The government's waiting for a decision.
No, I haven't claimed that. What I've said.
Well, you need to deny information to this committee. The minister has to.
So, Senator, I don't.
Yeah.
We've had this discussion at a number of Senate hearings, and I've been very clear in that we need a direction from government on what they want.
I'm sorry, you're accountable to the Australian Parliament. You don't seem to understand that, Mr. Parker, that you have an obligation to the Australian Parliament to disclose this information unless there's a public interest immunity. And you have not outlined a clear case for one.
No,
because you're resting back on the government's got to make a decision. It's got nothing to do with the Parliament.
No, Senator, I also have an obligation not to mislead the Senate. So if I give you information...
You wouldn't be misleading the Senate to give us the figures that are in a report.
Yeah, but
how would that be misleading the Senate? They're in the report, aren't they? They're black and white, they're dollar numbers.
So, Senator, there is a report, there is a business case with a range of different financial models in it, depending on what direction government wants to go. And we have explained that before.
Okay, well, it's just looking a little shifty, that's all. What is the next? You say that you're waiting for the government to make a decision. Is that to decide to build the project, or what's the next decision point?
There's a recommendation. IA have now completed their assessment of the business case. Within the business case, we recommended that government should finance or fund a development phase for the business case. And that would provide greater certainty on cost, program, and the benefits. So that is the funding that we would be looking for when we get a direction from government.
How much would a development phase, how long would it take, sorry? How long would a development phase take?
Don't say 2 to 2.5 years.
All right, okay. Not having any time soon. All right, thank you, Chair.
On that, thanks, Senator Canavan. Gentlemen, I thank you, Mr. Parker, Mr. Alcantara. I will let you go. And we now call the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator, followed by the NTC. Excuse me. No, all good, thanks, mate. Hello. No questions. None? No, okay. Welcome, Miss Rosie. Is this your first one? Did you come last time when I wasn't here? Online. Oh, it was one of those ones, was it? Hello. Mr. Smith, good to see you. Did you wish to make a brief opening call, opening statement? Okay, questions? I don't have any. Senator Canavan?
Yeah, I did ask some questions earlier about incidents involving heavy vehicles. The department indicated that there has been an increase in fatalities and injuries as well, I believe, involving heavy vehicles. Is that correct?
That's correct in several states, but it's not true across all states. South Australia
Is it true across Australia?
I think it's about flat, slightly up, but flat across the whole of Australia.
Okay. Has there been much investigation into why there is this increase then?
Yes, we look at the reasons behind. Police do the investigation of fatal incidents, so a number of those most recent ones are still under investigation. But the known causes are still the same as common causes of those incidents, which is distraction, speed, fatigue.
Is there a concern that there are drivers coming to the industry that are not properly qualified or trained?
I think there is a deep concern within the sector that training continues to be effective for the sector and an ageing workforce, yes.
Okay. So what's being done about that?
So there's a lot of work happening across the sector to look at training and competency within the sector. A lot of that is happening in relation to licensing, and there is a project team that's been established. Licensing occurs within the jurisdictions rather than through us in HBR. So that project team involves a number of the jurisdictions looking at improved qualification at the licensing level. But we are obviously involved post-licensing in regulating the sector once they're on the road.
Is there examples of people driving heavy vehicles without proper licensing in Australia?
Yes, there is.
And
it's increasing.
Yeah, that's increasing as well?
Yes.
Okay. So what's being done on that? Is that a matter for the states to enforce that more?
I think it starts with initial licensing, but secondly, we're obviously doing risk-based regulations. So we see an increased incidence of drivers, unlicensed drivers or drivers operating without the correct licensing or permits. We are conducting operations and increasing, surveillance.
So you do those yourselves? Sorry, excuse my ignorance, but you've got officers or
we have
people on the ground on the roads?
So in some states we're doing annual checks in relation to, so New South Wales does an annual check. In other states
What does an annual check mean?
Well, we're doing a mechanical check on vehicles through a warranting exercise in those states.
So on the road, you mean pulling them over? And
no,
check?
they come into our maintenance depot and we have a look at them.
Oh, that's on the truck itself?
Yep.
Okay, I suppose I'm going back to the driver and the licence.
Well, those things are also looked at that time. And then separately, we are also conducting operations on the road where we're looking either operations with police, where we're looking at all drivers that are going through a section or area.
Right.
And we also do risk-based operations where we target operators that we know or have seen a pattern of non-compliance with.
Can trucking companies employ people through visa arrangements or employ newly arrived migrants to drive trucks?
Yes.
Is that increasing, the use of visas? Do we track that?
We wouldn't have that number. We'd have to get that on notice.
Okay, well, if you could take that.
I can't tell you whether it's increasing, but it does occur.
Okay, if you could take that on notice. Presumably, even for a newly arrived migrant, they still have to have Australian licences.
That's correct.
There's no mutual recognition of a licence from overseas?
No. You still have to get an Australian licence. There are some aspects of mutual recognition, but you still have to get an Australian licence.
What are the aspects of mutual recognition?
I'd have to take that on notice. It'll be different by each state.
Okay, all right. What's involved in getting a heavy vehicle licence in Australia? Do you have to do a minimum number of hours on our roads like you do for a car?
So each state has different requirements.
Right.
That issue is one of the issues that has been looked at by that working group, which, again, just to note, it's not us that does the licensing, that's the jurisdiction. So these questions might be more relevant to ask some of those groups. But in that sense, they are looking at exactly that issue. What is the hours that you should be doing to get heavy vehicle licences in Australia and to move up into heavier vehicles? So that is part of what that working group is looking at the moment.
So do you have to do some hours in all states?
I believe so, yes.
Right, but there's a variance then in how much you have to do?
Yes.
Okay, and once you have your heavy vehicle licence or truck licence in one state, can you drive in other states?
Yes.
Right, so you could licence shop, so to speak, and go and get your licence in the state with the least stringent requirements?
Well, it is possible to move between states to do mechanical checks and other things. So one of the reasons we've been established is to try and standardise some of that across Australia.
Right, okay.
And to reduce the incidence of that occurring, but it still can occur, yes.
Okay. All right. I think Oh yes, no. There was one other line of questioning was the. We heard earlier from the department incidents of increases in sham contracting potentially. Is that something you're looking at?
Yes, I think that's a multi-agency issue to look at, but there is certainly the industry is highly concerned about increases in sham contracting or the potential for increases in sham contracting.
Right.
So our role in NHVR is to establish whether we have evidence that that could be causing an impact on our outcomes that we're regulating, which is safety, productivity and sustainability. And so we are doing some work on that. We're looking at matching ABNs to risk profiles of drivers. So in other words, we'd be looking at acting on that if we saw a profile that suggested there was use of multiple ABNs and increased safety incidents, for example. However, the issue of labour conditions, whether these are commercially appropriate contracts, that's not for us as a regulator to look at.
Can you tell, when you say you can look at the risk profile of an ABN, can you tell how long that person with that ABN has had a truck licence?
So that's what we're looking at the moment. It's actually quite hard to match data in that way. So that type of insight probably not yet, but that's what we're working on. But you presumably
could do that with cooperation from the states, right. I presume. So you could. It'd be federal government data with the ABN, and you'd have the individual, and then you could cross-match with state databases on licences.
It would require cross-agency cooperation, and that's what we're working on.
You're working on that now, because that presumably would be a great risk factor if you see a lot of ABNs being created for drivers who've only just got their licences.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Makes sense. Has anyone else got questions? I thought I might have some other questions, but does anyone else have questions?
Roberts.
We might rotate and I'll just check.
Thank you for appearing, Ms. Rosie. This is a life and death matter, killing people. Which are the states where there's been an increase in road heavy vehicle fatalities?
So New South Wales has had a slight increase in Queensland.
What about WA, Western Australia?
What WA, I can't give you, we don't regulate WA, but at a high level I understand WA is pretty flat.
Okay. I've heard a few stories, and that's all they are. You've got the official figures, but also anecdotally, are you hearing anything about, anecdotally, from drivers with experience on the road as to what sort of groups are the source of the new unlicensed drivers or the new untrained drivers or inadequately trained drivers?
We're always hearing insights. We've got a line that people can call if they want to give us information on illegal or other dangerous activity within the trucking sector. So yes, we do get insights on sham contracting and arrangements that are deemed to be illegal or unsafe, and we do track that. So one of the things that we're doing, and I would say is one of the things to the committee that we're very keen on, is the industry to call that line and to give us as much information as possible if they are worried about those concerns. Your constituents, if they're worried about those concerns, please call in. We are using that data very actively to track risk profile of operators and drivers. So we have a risk profile of every operator and every driver, and if there is increased calls about particular operators or particular drivers, we will be regulating them more strongly.
Are there any groups that appear more often and anecdotally or in the data? Nationalities, ethnicities?
By operator, we know the operators that are appearing more in the data, and I wouldn't say that there is any particular profile other than the way they operate.
Because what I've heard, and I was born in India, okay? I'm a migrant, so, but I just look at data objectively. That's why I'm asking, because I've heard so many stories from WA truckies, Queensland truckies, that a lot of Indians are getting licences very easily or not getting licences. So I don't know if anyone else has heard that. Chair has. So is there any way of tapping in?
The industry's heard it.
Sorry?
All of us in the industry know.
You all know? So
sorry.
It's a matter of, I think I'm not accusing you of anything, by the way.
No. All I can say to you is we take a risk-based approach. So irrespective of ethnicity, we will be looking at all operators and all drivers, and we will be taking a consistent approach across all those drivers. If there's groups that are higher risk, we will be acting on those groups, and you can be assured, and we're doing it right now, we are acting on a number of groups that we consider high risk, and we will take action, whether that's stopping accreditation, whether that's prohibiting their vehicles, or whether that's removing them from the system. We will be doing that, and we are agnostic about that, irrespective of their ethnicity or their backgrounds, we will be taking action against all operators that are outside or operating outside or at high risk.
Okay, I'm just passing on anecdotal information from WA truckies and Queensland truckies, and the chair's verified.
Understood. Yeah, thank you.
I'm just wondering when we let the rabbit-proof fence down and let you into WA, Malcolm, when did that happen? Snuck in. Sorry, Senator Cameron.
Just to follow up on that, putting aside, obviously get sensitive with issues around ethnicity, but can you see whether some of these drivers, these ABNs, whatever they are on a visa or are newly arrived? That presumably is a potential risk factor if they haven't grown up driving on Australian roads and used to our conditions.
Remember, we're not doing the licensing, so that is happening at jurisdictional level, so it's not something particularly we are looking at. If I turn it around and say, can we see what companies or organisations or individuals are appearing more on our high-risk groups? Yes, we can. We can see that there is a profile of some newer drivers in that list.
But presumably, at least those doing the right thing and getting a visa and what have you, and employing legal people, that data would be available within the Commonwealth Government, wouldn't it? Which companies are applying for visas and the like. Have you asked the Department of Employment, I presume, the Department of Employment for that information?
Oh, I'd have to take that on notice.
Okay.
We use a range of sources of data.
Yep.
I can't tell you specifically what data we have in that space.
All right, okay, thank you. I just had one other question. At the last set of estimates, we discussed fitness for work requirements. You indicated that there were no rules from the heavy vehicle regulator associated with fitness for work yet. Do you have any clarification about those requirements and whether you will play a compliance role?
Yes, I think we came back. The question was actually about medical assessments and whether there was a requirement to have a medical assessment prior to, as you drive, if you're already licensed, what medical assessments there were. We have come back to the committee on that. The reason we took it on notice is it's different by every state. So I have a list of all of the states and all of their different requirements here, if you'd like me to go through it.
Have you provided that to us?
We have
already?
provided.
I might not have seen it. All right, well, if that's already with us, that's fine. We can look at that ourselves. Okay, given the time, I might leave it there. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Senator Cameron. Ms Rosie, Mr Smith, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
There you go. I've just lost another 50 followers on Facebook. No, I'm just joking. I applaud. No, I applaud the NHVA. Every time I pick up the phone, they're on the end and do everything they can to help. Thank you. Catch you.
You don't have followers.
Talking about friends.
Do you have social media at all?
Hey, Michael?
Do you have social media?
I don't. Ben does. I'm not allowed to use it.
Safer that way.
I can't get on. I'll be official here. I now welcome the National Transport Commission, Mr Hopkins, Ms Rigas and Mr De Rosario. Hello, how are you going? Do you wish to make a brief opening statement?
No, thanks, Senator.
Thank you. Straight to questions, and I believe Senator Canavan, you have questions.
Yes, sorry, just give me 1 second, just trying to catch up here. All right, just asking about the heavy vehicle charges. Apparently that's gone up by 6% for next financial year, is that correct?
Senator, they haven't been increased. A recommendation was put to ministers last year who agreed that we should consult with industry on that 6% increase. We've just finished that consultation and we've provided a report to the minister. Under the Tax Act, we need to, I think it's a 60-day requirement for consultation, so that's now completed, and a report on that consultation has gone to the minister.
Okay, so you've proposed a 6% increase, is that the right way?
Last year, yes. Yeah.
Last year, okay. And this proposal is for next financial year?
Yeah, that's correct.
So that with that report going to the minister, is that still your proposal remains 6%?
So we haven't made a recommendation as part of that. What we've done is essentially done a summary of the consultation. Once ministers have made that decision that this is the number they want to consult on, it's essentially in the hands of ministers to make that call.
But you did propose 6%, just to be clear?
Yes.
But the report that's gone up, it's more a summary of the feedback.
That's right.
On that. What's the summary? Can you summarise? Is there wild support for a 6% increase?
No, Senator. It will surprise you to learn that there wasn't wild support, and in fact, industry groups got back to us with a range of alternative suggestions. some hovering around CPI, some recommendations for 4%, but no, nobody supported the 6%.
Yeah, well, not surprising. How did you calculate the 6%?
So the 6% was based on a pathway back to cost recovery. So the intention of the road user charge is that it recovers a certain portion of the wear and tear on the road, and that's based, and the cost base is based on what states and territories in the Commonwealth spend on road maintenance and construction. About 5 or 6 years ago, we got ahead of the curve, and we were actually getting more than cost recovery back from the industry. At that point, charges were frozen, I think, for 2 or 3 years, and fell dramatically behind, largely because states and territories had a big sort of post-COVID spend on infrastructure. What that's meant is that I think we're still about 10% behind what we think is cost recovery.
Okay, right, okay. The way this works is it's on a sort of pay-as-you-go basis, is that right? Is that still the case?
So it's pay-as-you-go.
Isn't there a word for it? I can't remember. It's been a
via the diesel by the diesel charges, and then it's trued up at the end depending on the type of truck, fuel use, obviously.
Yeah.
And companies will at that point apply for a rebate or be asked to require.
Sorry, I meant the cost base of the. The cost base is pay as you go in the sense that it's not depreciated over time or something.
No, that's right. Well, we have a project underway to try and move it to a forward-looking cost base that will involve a depreciation of those assets over the life of the assets.
Right.
And I think we're consulting on that in the next 2 weeks, I think.
Yeah, by the end of the month, Senator, there should be a consultation regulatory impact statement on that proposal.
Right, okay. And this, because we don't have it like that at the moment, you can get this lumpiness, presumably, where you have a year of a big spend and bang, the charge potentially goes up a significant amount. Very much so, and you saw that
when states and territories were spending a lot of money on infrastructure, that it sent a whole lot of costs to industry.
Right, okay. Okay, what about tolls? I've always wondered about that. Are they factored in?
Toll roads are excluded from, toll roads are excluded from the cost base on the basis that they're paid for.
So they're not recovered through this charge as well and double dipped. Okay. Are you publishing the submissions that have been made on the 6% proposal?
I'll have to take that on notice, Senator. I can't. Usually we would make those available on our website, but I'm not entirely sure about the Tax Act ones, so I will take that on notice.
Right. Look, finally, who makes this decision finally? Is it one just for the Commonwealth Minister, or does it have to go through the
No, it goes through the Infrastructure and Transport Ministers meeting.
Is it a decision made on a consensus basis, or?
I think all interim decisions are made on a consensus basis,
right.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I'll just check. I think that might be it. Sorry, just give me 1 second, because sometimes I miss. But yep, no, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's that? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers. Okay, last but not least, National Capital Authority.
Minutes, Dave.
He is joking, David. We've got the finger on the go button, mate.
How long have I got?
Yeah. We'll put it this way, if you keep waffling on too long, you'll be talking on an empty room. We're gone. Okay. A little bit of banter there. Can I welcome Ms. Doran? And Mr. Haydarian. Do you wish to make a brief opening statement?
No, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. You are the lucky last.
Thank you.
And the only one who wants to ask any questions is Senator Pocock.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for attending so late on a Monday night. And really looking forward to the upcoming briefing. Sorry we couldn't find a time before estimates. But I've got a few issues I'm keen to ask questions about, so we'll try and keep the sort of questions brief. Firstly, on the Hume Circle development. Media reports say that the NCA first met with the JEGA consortium in October 2023, then again on the 11th of December 2024, then again on the 8th of April 2025. In addition to these three, how many times has the NCA met with JEGA in relation to the development plans for the Hume Circle?
I would have to take that on notice, but I can say that those meetings that were cited were with the board. It's not unusual for the board to meet with proponents who are considering development proposals. By the same token, our staff will meet with proponents as well on a potentially a regular basis, particularly as developments are getting more certain and getting close to a works approval stage. It is part of our planning assessment process where we work through a pre-application phase of discussions with proponents of developments.
And in that time frame, do you also meet with community members, or is it just with proponents?
We can do it. Depends, of course, on the particular projects and the style of projects. We certainly have formal consultation processes as part of our due process when we get to those formal stages. On a large development, we will have an extended consultation period that will include pop-ups and meeting with community groups and a more proactive form of consultation rather than just a written submission process. And for a project that we know has particular stakeholder impacts, we will reach out and meet with those stakeholders. In fact, on Hume Circle, we did exactly that and reached out to some of the impacted stakeholders around that precinct.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I'll notice then how many community stakeholders you've met on the Hume Circle proposal, and how many pop-ups have you held for this?
For the Hume Circle, none, because the amendment at this stage is not of a level of detail that we considered required that. It's a very first stage, high-level amendment that's going through. At this stage, it has no detail of any particular proposals or developments. And so, other than the reach out that we have made to some of the impacted parties, it wasn't considered that a broader community outreach was required.
Okay.
Senator, if I may add, that's a standard process for any amendment to the National Capital Plan, so we haven't deviated from that in this. And as Ms. Doran has mentioned, this is really only at the infancy stages of proposing an amendment, and there's a process still needs to go through for it to...
And so once it's amendment, what's the process there for approval, or is that approval?
I suppose just to add to that, so most amendments to the National Capital Plan are setting up details of the regulatory planning framework. So they're essentially amendments to the legislation or the statutory framework. When a development moves into reality, it steps into the assessment phase and then becomes part of a regulatory works approval assessment process. And that's the stage where, there is a lot more detail around the aspects of the proposal and the stage at which we would have a more comprehensive consultation process with the community.
Mm-hmm. And then, so what would the approvals process be after if the territory plan was amended, if the National Capital Plan was amended?
So if you're asking the process for the amendment itself, it's gone out
once that's done.
So if the amendment is approved by the Minister, so it'll be a ministerial approval at the end of the day, that changes the National Capital Plan to put in place the Hume Circle precinct as a designated area for which the National Capital Authority is then the regulatory body. Going forward from there, if a developer wanted to come forward with a proposal in that precinct, the first step in that process would be for them to come forward with what are called detailed conditions of planning, design and development. Now, that's not the works approval stage, so we're not into the regulatory process yet. It's a stage where we ask developers to bring forward the details of their proposal. That's the stage at which we would consult with community. It's a stage where you would get the sorts of details around intended land use, the building sort of layout, building height, building mass, a landscape, the public realm, the street configuration. It's all of that. And it's almost like a master plan for whatever area of land they're looking to develop.
So there would need to be another consultation.
So the amendment we're putting through now requires that stage as a separate approval and a process that requires consultation as part of that process, and that's before you can bring forward a works approval.
I've had concerns raised with me that the consultation for this current stage that you're going through was over Christmas, New Year. A lot of people are busy, and I know that the Inner South Community Council's asked for consultations to be extended until their scheduled meeting on the 23rd of February. And I'm wondering what's happening with the extension, and why would you have consultation period over Christmas, New Year? You'd know what Canberra's like over that period.
It wasn't over Christmas. It started on the 5th of January. We have a board meeting in about the middle of December, so it was just a consequence of the timing of our work programs. We did intentionally hold it until in the new year rather than releasing it prior to Christmas, which we were in a position to do. The 4-week original consultation period is our standard period on this type of an amendment. We have extended that period, though, for another 2 weeks in response to community concerns. The Inner South Community Council has a meeting on the 23rd of February, which we've agreed to go along to and present to their broader membership. And if there are any issues that come out of that meeting, we'd certainly be open to taking those issues into the consultation process.
And are you going to hold a public meeting?
Their meeting is a public meeting for members in that that number of council areas. So to that extent, we'll be leveraging that public meeting. Again, it wasn't our engagement approach for this style of amendment to have a more public meeting process. It's a public consultation. It's open to everyone, but it wasn't one where we envisaged a public meeting as such.
And will the proponent be there to answer questions as well?
No, the amendment that's going forward does not touch on the details of any proposal, and that proposal hasn't been put forward in any formal way to the NCA.
But this amendment is only because you've had a proponent say we want to do this.
No, I don't think that's the case. In fact, the NCA has considered this form of proposal, the idea of the Hume Circle precinct, as early as 2020, which precedes the proponent's proposal. In fact, you might say that it was that early consideration that led to the proponent considering their proposal. It's also been part of the ACT government's considerations in their East Lake Place plan, and in their territory plan and district strategy amendments. This area has been highlighted as an area ready for urban development. So I think, these things are never, one thing comes first and the other, they often feed off each other.
Okay. I guess my concern is there's a lot of Canberrans, myself included, who want good densification, and I think that takes community buy-in and proper consultation and actually, I guess, showing the vision of what you want to do. And the feedback I've received is that this process hasn't really allowed that. And while I accept that there's multiple stages to the approval of the densification of Hume Circle and the proposed 15-storey buildings, for people in the community, that it kind of feels like it's moving pretty quick.
Yeah, I can say those objectives are the same objectives the NCA has. This first amendment is really to bring this precinct into the NCA's regulatory authority so that we and developers have certainty of what planning framework they're working in. The detail that you've mentioned and that the community is rightly looking for will definitely be available at the next stages of consultation.
In the past, the Fyshwick Business Association has put forward the Eastwick Green Line proposal. Have you? That was sort of just dismissed out of hand by the Barr government. Have you seen that proposal for densification along the rail corridor?
I won't say in detail. I am familiar with it, and yes, it was one that was presented to the ACT government.
Mm-hmm. But that's on ACT land, so it's nothing to do with NCA. Okay. Some questions on the bridge. Anyone who travels to Parliament House would know about the bridge works, and sort of commute times have really blown out. Can you give us a quick update on where things are up to? Definitely nothing happening underneath the bridge, but what's the latest?
There are, in fact, things happening underneath the bridge. The bridge has now moved into the first stage of the major construction works. So just before Christmas, we completed the preliminary works, which were the building of the crossover lanes, which allowed the switching of the traffic from one span of the bridge to the other. On the 8th or 9th of January, we actually closed the northbound span of the bridge and had all of the traffic flowing over the southbound span. That transition went relatively smoothly during the month of January. Being a quieter period in Canberra, it allowed commuters, I think, to get used to the new traffic arrangements. From our monitoring, and we are monitoring this very closely and with the support of ACT government, the delays haven't been extensive. The traffic has flowed pretty smoothly. We certainly have peak hour peaks. We have a very concentrated period of peak traffic across the bridge. We're conscious that we're only in the early weeks of sort of full return of traffic and schools and workers, so we're continuing to monitor that experience and behavioural response, I suppose, to the new traffic arrangements. That work on the span of the bridge is expected to take up to 12 months, weather permitting, but it's progressing well already on that closed northbound span. We have barges in place now underneath one of the piers, and that's the first stage of the work, is to actually lift the deck of the bridge off the piers and replace the bearers that are structurally supporting it. We've also seen some early works on the deck of the bridge, where they're starting to cut the holes and actually access the internals of that deck and prepare for the structural reinforcement that has to happen there.
Okay. And so, based on the start and what's happened, it's still on track for the 1 year for each span?
Yes, yeah, we're certainly on track for that at the moment.
Okay, thank you. And then just finally, I was keen to ask some questions about the the Commonwealth Park swimming facility without the dive pool. and to really ask about the dive pool. And I understand from the Chief Minister's statement in the ACT Legislative Assembly that the NCA approached the ACT government with the proposal to relocate Civic Pool to Commonwealth Park. That's correct?
Again, it's. I think it was more a collaborative process. I think the ACT government were looking at what they might do with the civic pool, which was aged and had some maintenance issues. We were looking at a concept vision for Commonwealth Park more broadly, and how it might serve the community going forward. In that piece of work, the potential for an aquatic centre in Commonwealth Park was considered and was proposed.
And so did the NCA approach the ACT government about that, or what was the sequencing there?
Look, I couldn't say what the sequencing
Maybe just on
was.
notice, if you could look at how that actually happened, how NCA potentially reached out. That was the Chief Minister's words. I'm interested at the time, given people have been talking about diving facilities in the ACT for many years now, was that part of the discussion, and if not, why was that not raised?
No, as far as I'm aware, there were no detailed discussions around either what the ACT government was planning to do in terms of their aquatic facilities, nor what a potential aquatic facility in Commonwealth Park would actually include by way of its components. So I think the discussions around the dive pool more specifically have come out as the proposals for what the new aquatic centre might be have been consulted with industry. I do know that as the ACT has been doing their site investigations on the proposed site in Commonwealth Park, the ability to go as deep as would be necessary to service a full 10-metre dive facility doesn't seem to be feasible in that area.
What's down there? What's stopping?
It is a fairly rocky area, and it's also got a water table being, on the shores of the lake that you would hit at a certain depth.
Okay. I thought it was proposed for being up on near the car parks there, up the hill a bit.
It is. That's the area that will be built on. I think a dive pool needs to go 5 or 6 metres deep.
It's got to be more than 5 metres above the lake. I'm sorry. I just doubt how much they've actually looked into this. And if digging through rock is the problem, I'm sure we've got some, Canberra contractors who can do that. Why hasn't this been? We heard from the department earlier that they had sort of talked about a like-for-like civic to Commonwealth Park aquatic facility, and when Canberrans hear that, they assume like as in like everything that's going to be there for like, not just a 50-metre pool. And so how come this hasn't come up in discussions?
Well, I'm not sure that it was a like-for-like discussion. I'm not aware of a specific like-for-like discussion, so I would have to take that.
Sure, maybe you can take that on notice.
If I can add, if I may, add one slight bit of context is that when the point that Ms. Doran is making is also evident in the fact when the NCA went out at the time with to consult on the concept vision for the Commonwealth Park, the position of the pool, the picture of the pool is literally just is a placeholder effectively saying pool here potentially. Didn't provide any details as to look, feel, shape or anything. So those discussions hadn't taken place. It was really just very early stages of whether it is possible or whether that location could be used. So there was no consideration given to the shape or form of it.
Sure. Okay, and just maybe the last
Chair,
two questions.
Just a correction, Senator Pocock. I'm just advised that the department didn't say like for like. I'm just wondering if we can have that clarified.
Where did you get that from?
I've just been advised.
Okay. Happy to. I know Minister Berry said like for like, and we were talking about like for like earlier, but I'm happy to. The department will know better than me on this one. You've mentioned, just last two questions, you've mentioned that in your considerations you wanted to ensure that the Commonwealth Park was serving the community. So did you undertake any work to find out what Canberrans would want from an aquatic facility?
So the Commonwealth Park concept vision was the product where we canvassed the community broadly about what they would want from Commonwealth Park. Our objective was to, one, respond to the community, but also preserve the original intent of the park, which is as a recreational and a landscape park in the centre of the city. The potential initiative of an aquatic centre in Commonwealth Park was certainly in the concept vision. It was very clearly illustrated there as a possible option. In the comments that we got back from community around the concept vision, when it went to the aquatic facility as a concept, they were largely positive in terms of it being located there. Some comments around accessibility and the need to consider transport, etc. There was a group who commented specifically on if there's an aquatic centre there, they would like it to provide these certain facilities, a 50-lane competition level pool, dive facility, etc. All of those comments we passed on to ACT Government, as ACT Government is the body responsible now for taking the project forward.
Okay. And at any point, just last question, at any point has the ACT Government approached the NCA to get advice on height restrictions with a diving platform and whether that would fit within the National Capital Plan?
Not specifically on the diving platform, but as part of our process of working through any proposal, we're working with ACT Government as they're developing the design, the early design for the aquatic centre. Certainly height is one of the issues that would be considered in that, as will be integration into the landscape, as will be impacts on heritage issues around the Parliament House vista. So all of those matters we're in sort of open dialogue at the moment as their plans, which are only at early stage, are evolving.
But they've never said to you, hey, would a dive tower fit in there?
Not specifically, but of course a dive tower at 10 metres comes at quite a height. So, not only the depth of the pool, but the height of the tower would have to be a consideration. But I think the depth issue has kind of discounted it before we got to the second matter.
Yeah. And you'd think if at 5 metres you're hitting the lake, you add 10 metres on that can't be anywhere near Parliament House's height, so I wouldn't have thought it would be an issue, but we can ask some people who are good at their heights.
That's right. You would have to know where you're starting from.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Pocock. For the officers of the NCA, thank you very much. Travel safe. That now concludes tonight's hearing. Minister, thank you very much. And of course, the Secretariat, Dr. Emma, you and your crew, brilliant. And of course, the real workers, the beavers behind the glass, Hansard and Broadcasting, thank you so much. On behalf of the committee, we wish you well, and we now stand adjourned. Thank you, gang.